Chapter 75. Chapter 75. Summoned by Yao Tianyu. 549690339. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had stayed in the Lu family for 7 days. In the past 7 days, other than cultivating, Lu Ming had been accompanying Li Ping and chatting. There were a few times when he almost wanted to tell Li Ping that Lu Yuntian might still be alive. However, he managed to hold himself back in the end. 7 days later, Lu Ming bade Li Ping farewell and rode the Dark Blood Wolf back to the mystical sword sect. After 5 days, the mystical sword sect was already within sight. Go. Since you've ferried me for so long, I'll set you free. Lu Ming patted the Dark Blood Wolf's neck. Woo! The Dark Blood Wolf cried out excitedly and ran away, as if it was afraid that Lu Ming would go back on his words. It disappeared into the forest in the distance in the blink of an eye. Lu Ming smiled and walked towards the mystical sword sect. Not long after, Lu Ming returned to the mystical sword sect. However, he didn't return to the dormitory first. Instead, he went to the Hall of Missions. He had to hand in the mission first. He walked into the mission palace hall and came to a counter. Junior brother, are you here to accept the mission, or to submit it? A pretty young woman asked from behind the counter. I'm here to hand in my mission. Lu Ming passed a mission card to the young lady. It was the Blood Reiki Flowers mission. As for the Zhu family's escort mission, since the Zhu family had already been destroyed, there was naturally no need to hand it in. Blood Flower mission? I wonder how many Blood Reiki flowers you've collected? The young woman asked. She knew that this task was not easy to do. It was not easy to collect the Blood Reiki flowers. Not only did they have to go to the Dark Blood Mountain, but they also only needed 100 contribution points to collect one. It would take too long to go back and forth. It was not worth it at all. Therefore, not many people accepted it. She was rather curious about how many flowers Lu Ming could collect. Senior sister, please check. Lu Ming waved his hand and a huge pile of Blood Reiki flowers appeared on the counter. So many? The young woman looked at the Blood Reiki flower on the counter and was stunned. Her small mouth was wide open. She had never expected that Lu Ming would be able to collect so many Blood Reiki flowers. The pile of Blood Reiki flowers also attracted the attention of a large number of people nearby. So many Blood Reiki flowers. Who is this person? You don't even know this year's Rookie King. So it's him. He's so lucky to have found so many Blood Reiki flowers. You're indeed very lucky. Envious voices could be heard from all around. Can you help me check? Lu Ming stretched out his hand and waved it in front of the young woman's eyes. Okay. The young woman came to her senses and quickly helped Lu Ming to count. There are 55 Blood Reiki flowers in total. Each one costs 100 contribution points. That's 5,500 contribution points in total. The young woman said, her eyes revealing a light of envy. 5,500 contribution points. She didn't know how long it would take for her to earn that much. Lu Ming nodded and passed his identity jade card to the young lady. After a while, Lu Ming's identity jade card had an additional 5,500 contribution points. After handing in the mission, Lu Ming did not stop and went straight to his dormitory. Lu Ming did not notice that there were 2 young men outside the mission's hall who had been watching him leave. Lu Ming is back. Hurry back and report to senior brother Yao Tianyu. Let's go. A moment later, Lu Ming returned to the dormitory. He realized that Pang Shi and Hua Qi were not around. Lu Ming guessed that Pang Shi and Hua Qi were most likely cultivating somewhere else or doing missions. Lu Ming did not think much of it. He walked into the room, sat cross-legged, and began to cultivate the true war dragon technique. After a few days of cultivation, Lu Ming's cultivation had already been completely consolidated. He was now fully focused on advancing towards the middle stage of the 7th grade Master Realm. 3 hours later, Lu Ming finally ended his cultivation. Bang! At this moment there was a loud crash from the door of the courtyard outside. Seemed to have been kicked open. It's not Pang Shi or Hua Qi. Lu Ming's heart stirred. If it were Pang Shi or Hua Qi, they would not have kicked the door in like this. Lu Ming got up and walked out of the room. he saw two young men walking in from outside. Lu Ming, it's good that you're here. A young man in a red robe sneered when he saw Lu Ming. Who are you? Lu Ming narrowed his eyes slightly. We are the Azure Dragon Hall's disciples. Senior brother Yao Tianyu is summoning you. Hurry up and bring the Dark Bloodstone to the Azure Dragon Hall and meet him. The red-robed young man said coldly. His tone was filled with arrogance and a commanding tone. Yao Tianyu. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. He suddenly remembered. Wasn't he the Yao Tianyu on the bronze list that the Azure Dragon Hall disciples had mentioned on the Dark Blood Mountain? He was really in a hurry. Lu Ming had just returned and he was already here. And it was a summon? She wanted him to meet her. The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He replied indifferently with two words. I'm not free. What? Not free? Senior brother Yao Tianyu has summoned you. Even if you have a serious matter to deal with, you have to put it down. Quickly take the Dark Bloodstone and come with us. The red-robed youth berated. He still had a haughty expression. Yao Tianyu, what the hell are you talking about? I told you I'm not free. Get lost. Lu Ming's face darkened and he said coldly. What? You're courting death, you. Get lost. Before the red-robed young man could say anything else, Lu Ming let out a furious roar and charged forward, his fists blasting out. Bang! Bang! The two young men were also 7th grade Master Realm, but they were no match for Lu Ming. They were sent flying out of the door and landed heavily on the ground. Lu Ming looked down at the two of them and said coldly, I told you to get lost. If you don't, I don't mind throwing the two of you off the Vermilion Bird Peak. Lu Ming, don't be so arrogant. Just you wait. You won't have a good end for offending senior brother Yao Tianyu. The red-robed young man shouted loudly, and then fled with the other man. The bronze ranking. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He didn't know much about the bronze list, but he knew that anyone who could be on the bronze list was a super genius. The highest cultivation level of a bronze disciple was the 9th grade Master Realm. Once they broke through to the Great Martial Master Realm, as long as they were not too old, they would be promoted to a Esilavira disciple. The geniuses on the bronze list were all at the peak of the 9th grade Master Realm. Moreover, they weren't ordinary peak 9th grade Master Realm experts. They were all geniuses with extremely powerful combat strength. It was said that an ordinary 9th grade master couldn't even last one move against a genius on the bronze list. The geniuses on the bronze list were all unrivaled in the same realm, and they could even fight against those of a higher realm. To the current Lu Ming, he was undefeatable. Lu Ming returned to his room and started to think. My martial arts skills are too weak now. I have to practice the fire gun chant as soon as possible. But before that, I need to practice the basic gun skills. Lu Ming pondered. No matter what weapon one cultivated, one would need a foundation. Lu Ming had never cultivated a spear technique before. Without a foundation, it was impossible for him to cultivate a black-level low-quality spear technique the moment he started. One had to have a solid foundation for the spear technique in order to cultivate a profound spear technique. Oh. Chapter 76. Chapter 76. Chapter 76. A man has his own actions and his own faults. 549690339. The basic usage of the spear was mainly divided into 6 types. It was called the Spear 6 Words Formula. Collapse, pull, press, cover, pick, and stab. Only by mastering these 6 basic techniques would he be able to cultivate a more profound spear technique. Immediately, Lu Ming picked up Zhu Bing's spear in the Supreme Shrine and began to cultivate. Whoosh! The long spear turned into a dot and stabbed forward. Then with a sweep, the long spear turned into a moon shadow and swept out. In this way, Lu Ming practiced the 6-word formula of the basic spearmanship over and over again. In an extremely spacious and luxurious courtyard of the Azure Dragon Court, Yao Tianyu sat in the upper part of the living room with the golden saber. A few people were reporting news to him. 2 of them were the 2 people who went to summon Lu Ming previously. Senior brother Yao, that Lu Ming is too arrogant. He doesn't respect senior brother Yao at all. The red-robed youth said. Lu Ming, do you really think of yourself as the number 1 person? You dare to ignore me? I will make you regret it. Yao Tianyu's eyes were cold. Senior brother Yao Lu Ming is a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall. If he's hiding in the Vermilion Bird Hall, it'll be hard to deal with him. Another young man said with a frown. Do you have any ideas? Yao Tianyu asked. At this time, a shrewd young man rolled his eyes and said, Senior brother Yao, I have an idea that can force Lu Ming to show himself or even make him take the initiative to attack. Then, we can take Lu Ming down with a legitimate reason. The man immediately revealed his plan. Alright, ha ha ha, let's do that. Yao Tianyu laughed out loud. In the Supreme Shrine, Lu Ming had been practicing the 6 words long spear formula. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. I'm still not stable enough. I didn't have any foundation in spear techniques in the past, so my cultivation was too slow. Lu Ming sighed secretly. Also, although this spear is a spiritual weapon of upper 2nd level, its body isn't soft enough. Looks like I'll need to buy a new one in the future. Lu Ming looked at the long spear in his hands and thought to himself. The spear was mainly divided into the spearhead and the spear body. However, the most important thing was still the spear body. The spear body needed to be both hard and soft. It had to be hard and heavy, yet it had to be soft and elastic to a certain extent. Only then could the true might of the spear technique be unleashed. Zhu Bing's spear was called the fire pattern spear. The spear body was made of fire pattern iron, and the tip of the spear was made of dark iron essence. It was considered a good upper 2nd level spiritual weapon, but Lu Ming was not satisfied. Although fire-patterned iron had a certain degree of elasticity, it was still not enough. At this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. He realized that there was a commotion outside. With a thought, Lu Ming left the Supreme Shrine, opened the door and walked out. In the courtyard, a group of people walked in. Hua Qi was among them. However, at this time, his face was bruised and swollen. He and the others carried a person in. Be careful, you guys, be careful. Hua Qi called out. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He walked forward and asked, Hua Qi, what happened? And who injured you? Lu Ming, you're back. Hua Qi was slightly taken aback when he saw Lu Ming. Then he dodged his gaze and said, I'm fine. I just accidentally fell while doing a mission. Fell down. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. He then looked at the person who was being carried in by the crowd. At first glance, his eyes suddenly narrowed. This person was none other than Pang Shi. At this moment, Pang Shi's face was deathly pale, and his eyes were tightly shut. He had already fallen unconscious. What's going on? Lu Ming's expression darkened as he asked. There was a moment of silence and no one spoke. Lu Ming's face darkened as he searched Pang Shi's body. The more he fumbled, the gloomier Lu Ming's expression became. The bones in his 2 legs were broken into several pieces, the bones in his arms were broken, and 3 of his ribs were broken. What was more serious was that his internal organs had also suffered considerable damage. This was clearly a heavy blow. Such a ruthless method. With such a serious injury, a single mistake could affect his future martial Dao path. In more serious cases, he might even be crippled. Speak, what happened? Lu Ming's voice was extremely cold. Lu Ming, it's really fine. It's all our own fault. Hua Qi said through gritted teeth. What caused this? Lu Ming continued to ask. Hua Qi, don't hide it anymore. If you don't tell me, I'll tell you. At this time, another young man shouted. The young man was called Lu Qi. Actually, Lu Ming had some impression of these young people. They were the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Hall this year. Lu Qi, you can't say. Hua Qi called out. Hua Qi, shut up. Lu Ming shouted and then looked at Lu Qi. Speak. Lu Qi gritted his teeth. Senior brother Lu Ming, Pang Shi was beaten up. He was beaten up by the people from the Star and Moon Alliance. Star Moon Alliance. Lu Ming frowned. He had never heard of this Star Moon Alliance. Senior brother Lu Ming. The Star Moon Alliance is a force formed by some of the Azure Dragon Hall's disciples. They have built a Star Moon Tower in the trading area, which specializes in buying materials and items from disciples. The price is slightly higher than if you exchange them with contribution points. Lu Qi started explaining. Lu Ming nodded. The trading zone was located in the middle of the 4 great academies. It was where the disciples of the 4 great academies bought and sold their items. Although it was convenient to exchange at the contribution palace, the exchange price was relatively lower. Therefore, many disciples would choose to trade in the trading zone when they obtained some materials for alchemy or weapon refinement when they went out for missions. It was more cost-effective that way. Lu Qi continued, during this period of time Pang Shi and we went out on a mission together. We obtained some materials and sold them at the Star Moon Tower. Who knew that the Star Moon Tower would be so despicable? They only offered 1 tael of Esilavir for an item that cost 1,000 taels of Esilavir. Pang Shi was so angry that he argued with them. In the end he was beaten up like this. Even we were beaten up. That's right. The worst thing is that they're only targeting our Vermilion Bird Hall. The other halls are doing fair trade. Another young man shouted. I see, so it's only directly facing the Vermilion Bird Hall. Lu Ming muttered. At this moment he had calmed down. However, the cold glint in his eyes was extremely cold. The other young men could not help but shiver when they met his gaze. Hua Qi, quickly invite the sex alchemist over. No matter how much money I have to spend, I have to save Pang Shi. Lu Ming said coldly. I've already sent someone to invite him. He'll be here soon. Hua Qi said. That's good. I'll leave Pang Shi in your care. Lu Ming turned around and walked out. Lu Ming, you can't. There are many experts in the Star Moon Tower. You're not their match. You'll just be courting death if you go. Hua Qi called out. If I don't go, I won't be at ease. Lu Ming only left this sentence and strode away. Although Lu Ming and Pang Shi had only known each other for a few months, Pang Shi had a straightforward and honest personality. Lu Ming had long acknowledged him as the son of a hunter. Lu Ming treated him as a friend or even a brother. Now that Pang Shi had been beaten up to such a state, he could not just ignore it. Although he felt that this matter was very strange and could be a trap, he still felt that it was a trap. But so what? As a man, there were things he should do and things he shouldn't. If he didn't, he wouldn't be at ease. Oh. Chapter 77. Chapter 77. Chapter 77 Arrogant and Despotic. 549690339. Looking at Lu Ming's back as he left, anxiety flashed across Hua Qi's face. He thought to himself, no, Lu Ming will definitely be at a disadvantage if he goes like this. I heard that the Star Moon Tower is backed by Yao Tianyu, a genius on the bronze ranking. No matter how strong Lu Ming is, he can't be a match for him. I'm going to look for Feng Wu. I'll ask her to look for Elder Mulan. Otherwise, Lu Ming will be in danger. Hua Qi warned the others before hurriedly leaving. Oh, speaking of the Star Moon Tower, there was probably no one in the entire trading district who did not know of it. It was extremely famous. This was because the Star Moon Tower had the support of Yao Tianyu, a genius on the bronze ranking. Therefore, the Star Moon Tower's strength was one of the top in the entire trading district. This was because Esilavir disciples would not interfere with such ordinary trading places. They had a higher class venue. The Star Moon Tower was a 3-story building that occupied a large area. Lu Wei was a small leader in the Star Moon Tower. He had joined the Star Moon Tower for more than a year. Due to his quick-witted mind, good management skills, and ruthless methods, he had become a small leader in just over a year. At this moment, he was lazily sitting on an armchair in front of the Star Moon Tower's main entrance and looking forward. This was because there were still some people surrounding the front of the Star Moon Tower. These people were the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Hall. These people were the same as Pang Shi and the others. They had all been scammed by the Star Moon Tower. At that moment they were all glaring at Lu Wei, but they did not dare to say anything. This was because they had just seen with their own eyes how one of the disciples had been beaten up by the members of the Star Moon Alliance. He had almost been beaten to death. Lu Wei held a cup of tea and sipped it slowly. Looking at the newbies below, who were angry but dared not say anything, he felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. Damn it, my materials are worth 3,000 taels of Esilavir, and they only gave me 3 taels of Esilavir. What's the difference between this and robbery? The disciples clenched their fists tightly and roared in their hearts. What are you all looking at? Asking for a beating, right? Hurry up and get lost. Lu Wei chided him from above. I'll leave if you return the materials to me. Finally, a thin teenager around the age of 15 could not help but call out. Oh, you still dare to ask for the materials back? Are you dreaming? Get this straight, we've already bought your materials and we've already given you the Esilavir. This is a fair trade, understand? Before Lu Wei could say anything, a lackey with a big mouth jumped out next to him and shouted. After scolding him, he sneaked a glance at Lu Wei and saw Lu Wei nodding his head secretly. He was overjoyed. It seemed that Lu Wei was very satisfied with his performance. Below, the thin young man's face was red. He clenched his fist and said, Fair? My materials are worth more than 5,000 taels of Esilavir, and you're only giving me 5 taels of Esilavir. I risked my life to get them, you can't do this. Oh, you still dare to talk back? I think your bones are itching. Do you want to be like that big guy from before and have all your bones broken? Our alliance master personally dealt with that one, so it'll be the same if I do it now. The minion with a big mouth sneered and walked down step by step. The skinny young man gritted his teeth and shouted, What you're doing is against the sect's rules. I'm going to lodge a complaint against you at the law enforcement hall. Oh, you still want to complain about us to the law enforcement hall? I think your bones are really itching. The big-mouthed minion's face was gloomy as he walked towards the thin youth. The skinny boy's face turned pale. The other new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples gritted their teeth, but none of them dared to say a word. In the distance, many disciples from other courtyards were watching the show. They were all very interested as if they were watching a good show. Don't come over. The skinny youth roared and struck out with his palm. However, he was only in the 9th grade warrior realm, while the big-mouthed lackey was an old disciple who had already reached the 3rd grade master realm. He was no match for him. With one move, the skinny young man was hit and spat out blood. He retreated continuously, but the big-mouthed minion quickly caught up and grabbed the skinny young man's neck. You still dare to attack? You're looking for a beating. The big-mouthed minion shouted coldly, then raised his other hand high and slapped the thin youth's face. He's in trouble. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciple sighed and closed his eyes. However, the expected slap didn't sound out. The crowd fell into silence. They opened their eyes in curiosity and saw that the big-mouthed lackey's arm was being held by someone. It was a youth of about 15 years old, about the same age as them, but he was dressed in a blue robe and had a slender figure. Just by standing there, he gave off the feeling of being as unmoving as a mountain. The thin teenager was prepared to be beaten up, but he suddenly realized that the big-mouthed minion's arm was held by someone. He turned his head and saw a delicate and pretty face. However, this face was extremely cold. Lu, senior brother Lu Ming. The thin teenager could not help but think. Who are you? You dare to block me, are you looking for death? The minion with the big mouth shouted. Oh, me? She's just a new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall. Lu Ming said indifferently. A new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall. When he heard that Lu Ming was just a new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall, the big-mouthed lackey's courage was boosted. He shouted, You're just a new disciple, and you dare to grab my hand? If you don't let go, then kneel down and admit your mistake, I might spare you. Is that so? Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. Trash like you, what are you still doing here? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ming exerted force in his palm. Gotcha! The sound of bones cracking was heard. Then there was the shrill scream of the big-mouthed minion. My hand is broken, let go of my hand. The big-mouthed minion cried out in pain. He loosened his grip on the skinny teenager and desperately tried to break Lu Ming's arm. I can let you go. Lu Ming sneered. Then he raised his arm high and slapped it down hard. Pa! It was an extremely loud slap. With the sound of the slap, the big-mouthed young man's body was like a broken garbage bag being rolled up by the wind. He flew out with a whoosh sticking to the ground. Everyone could also see that as he flew out, teeth mixed with blood spurted out of his mouth. The big-mouthed face collapsed and deformed. Bang! The big-mouthed minion fell heavily on the wall beside the stairs. He screamed and fainted. Cool. It felt so good. the Vermilion Bird Hall's new apprentices roared in their hearts. This slap was simply too satisfying, too satisfying. The big-mouthed minions were arrogant and despotic just now, but now they were slapped so badly. It was so satisfying that it seeped into their bones. They wished that they could transform into Lu Ming and give the big-mouthed young man a few tight slaps. At that moment, Lu Wei and the other members of the Star Moon Alliance, who were standing at the entrance of the Star Moon Tower, had their faces turned gloomy. Oh. Chapter 78. Chapter 78. Slapping his big mouth. 549690339. Where did this piece of shit come from? Did you eat the guts of a leopard? How dare you hit the people of the Star and Moon Alliance? If I don't cripple you today, I'll change my surname to yours. A dark-skinned young man walked out. He had a majestic figure with bulging muscles like black iron. His eyes were cold as he glared at Lu Ming with a murderous look. Bang! He suddenly leaped from the top of the stairs. While he was in the air, his body glowed with blood-red light and a huge black bear appeared. There were 2 blood-red chakras on the black bear. With his 4th-grade Master Realm cultivation and the black bear bloodline, the burly young man's aura grew even stronger. Like a mountain, he pressed down on Lu Ming. This burly young man was several times stronger than the big-mouthed young man from before. Above, Lu Wei and the rest sneered. They believed that the burly young man would definitely be able to make Lu Ming suffer a great loss. How strong could a new disciple be? However, the next moment the smiles on their faces froze. Pa! It was still a loud slap. Then, everyone saw the strong young man with an imposing manner fly back at a speed faster than when he had pounced forward. His face was deformed, and blood mixed with teeth flew everywhere. His body fell heavily to the ground, and with a scream, he followed in the footsteps of the big-mouthed young man and fainted. CSI. Lu Wei and the other members of the Star Moon Alliance could not help but gasp. No matter how arrogant they were, they could tell that Lu Ming was an expert. However, since when was there such a powerful master among the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples? Could it be? Lu Wei's expression changed. He slowly stood up from his chair and asked, "Speak, who are you?" "Senior brother Lu Ming, well done." At that moment, the skinny youth shouted in excitement. Although the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples had seen Lu Ming earlier, everything had happened so quickly that they did not even have the time to call out his name. Lu Ming? The newcomer king Lu Ming? On the steps, the expressions of the other members of the Star Moon Alliance changed slightly. To some people, the newcomer king still had some weight, especially 2 months ago when Lu Ming had defeated Ningfeng. So it was him. Not far away, the other senior disciples of the 4 courtyards suddenly understood. It was no wonder that among this year's newcomers, only Lu Ming had the ability and the guts to send 2 members of the Star and Moon Alliance flying in front of the door. Lu Ming, it's really you? But let me tell you, even though you're the newcomer king, you're still too young to cause trouble in the Star Moon Alliance. Lu Wei's eyes flashed as he said coldly. A cold smile hung on the corners of Lu Ming's mouth. Step by step, he ascended the steps and walked towards Lu Wei and the rest. Lu Ming, what do you want to do? Do you really dare to go against the Star Moon Alliance? You have to think carefully. The leader of the Star Moon Alliance, Chen Yueshing, is a master on the verge of reaching the 9th grade. I might as well tell you that behind her is senior brother Yao Tianyu, who is on the bronze ranking. If you dare to act rashly, you'll be doomed eternally. Lu Wei shouted with an ugly expression. Lu Ming's figure paused and he stopped in his tracks. Yao Tianyu, it's Yao Tianyu. Lu Ming's eyes flickered with a shocking murderous intent. At this moment, on the 3rd floor of the Star Moon Tower, a few young men were observing the situation below. One of them was wearing a long robe with stars and moon emblazoned on it. This person was the leader of the Star Moon Alliance, Chen Yueshing. Alliance Master, aren't you going to make a move now? One of the young men asked. There's no need for us to do anything. Just let Lu Ming do whatever he wants. It's worth it for trash like Lu Wei and the others to be beaten up. Senior brother Yao Tianyu and the people from the Tribunal Council will be here soon. At that time we can seize the opportunity to take down Lu Ming. Chen Yueshing smiled faintly. In his eyes, Lu Wei and the others were just pawns that he could use. Alliance Master is wise. The other young men took the opportunity to flatter him. Below, Lu Wei saw that Lu Ming had stopped. He thought that Lu Ming was afraid of Yao Tianyu's reputation. He immediately looked smug and shouted, "Lu Ming, you've slapped 2 members of the Star Moon Alliance. This is equivalent to smashing the Star Moon Alliance's reputation. It's a serious crime. How about this? Take out 2,000 contribution points, no 5,000 contribution points as medical expenses and apologize in public. I'll consider sparing you." "Oh really? You sure are confident." Lu Ming continued to walk forward step by step. Lu Wei's expression changed again as he shouted, "Lu Ming, what do you want to do? I'm warning you, stop right now." However, Lu Ming had no intention of stopping. He continued to walk toward Lu Wei step by step. Cold sweat began to form on Lu Wei's face. He suddenly shouted, "Go all together, cripple him. Buzz. An NBSP whoosh." Oh! Immediately, more than a dozen young men behind Lu Wei rushed forward. Beams of blood-red light flashed. These young men chose to activate their bloodline without hesitation. "Get back to where you came from." Lu Ming waved his hand and slapped it. A series of loud slaps resounded in the air. The Star Moon Alliance members who had rushed over were sent flying back at a speed faster than when they had come. All of them fell to the ground screaming in pain. Blood and teeth were spurted all over the ground. From the beginning to the end, Lu Ming only waved his hand, as if he was swatting flies, and the members of the Star Moon Alliance were sent flying. CSI. A series of gasps could be heard. The disciples of the 4 courtyards were all dumbfounded. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples were especially excited. They were all trembling. So strong. Lu Ming has become stronger again. This is a genius, a true super genius. Xianjian sect, you only see him once in a few years. Some of the senior disciples said with complicated expressions. All of a sudden, Lu Wei was the only one left at the gate of the Star Moon Tower. He was so frightened that his face turned pale. He stared at Lu Ming, his body trembling. "Lu Ming, I'm warning you. Don't do anything rash." Lu Wei's voice trembled. However, Lu Ming did not look at him. Instead, he lifted his head to look at the entire Star Moon Tower and mumbled, "The Star Moon Tower no longer needs to exist." Boom! Then Lu Ming threw a punch at a pillar at the side. Boom! The pillar was made of extremely hard black ironwood. However, under Lu Ming's punch, it exploded into pieces, sending wood chips flying in all directions. Bang! After that, Lu Ming moved and blasted another pillar. With the same boom, the pillar was smashed into pieces. Ka-ka! After 2 pillars were broken, the entire Star Moon Tower started to shake and make cracking sounds. Lu Ming, you're crazy. What are you doing? Stop it, stop it. Lu Wei's face turned deathly pale, and he started to scream madly. On the 3rd floor, Chen Yueshing could no longer remain calm. She shouted madly, damn it, what is this guy trying to do?" However, Lu Ming had no intention of stopping. The sound of a sword rang out as he unsheathed his long sword. He continuously slashed out a few sword chis towards the pillars at the side of the Star Moon Tower. The sword chi whistled and was extremely sharp. It directly cut down 4 pillars on the left and right. Oh! Chapter 79. Chapter 79. Chapter 79, Tearing Down the Star Moon Tower. 549690339. The Star Moon Tower had used a total of 8 pillars. Lu Ming had broken 6 of them consecutively, leaving only the last 2 pillars. Even with the support of the 2 walls, the Star Moon Tower started to shake violently, making cracking sounds. "Lu Ming, you should die. You should die." A furious roar came from the 3rd floor, and then a few figures jumped down. It's Chen Yueshing. The leader of the Star Moon Alliance, Chen Yueshing, has finally come out. Someone shouted. At this moment, Chen Yueshing's face was twisted. She glared at Lu Ming and shouted, "Lu Ming, how dare you destroy the Star Moon Tower? Today I will break every bone in your body and break every vein in your body. I will turn you into a useless person." A useless person who is worse than a pig or a dog. Lu Ming's means were completely beyond his expectations. He had thought that no matter how strong Lu Ming was, it would take some effort for him to beat Lu Wei and the rest. By then, Yao Tianyu had already arrived with the people from the law enforcement hall. However, he had never expected that Lu Ming's combat strength had far exceeded his expectations. At the same time, his ruthlessness and boldness had completely exceeded his expectations. Lu Ming actually wanted to tear down the Star Moon Tower. This was his blood, sweat, and tears, so he had no choice but to show himself. Lu Ming did not say a word. He only looked at Chen Yuexing coldly. Lu Ming, I don't mind telling you this. I was the one who broke all the bones in your friend's body. Now, I'm going to let you go and accompany your friend. Chen Yuexing's face was twisted with killing intent. The aura from her body was as heavy as a mountain. Late 8th grade Master Realm. This was Chen Yuexing's strength. She was extremely powerful, much more powerful than Ningfeng. Otherwise, she would not have been able to open the Star Moon Tower and control the Star Moon Alliance. At the bottom of the stairs, the Vermilion Bird Hall's new apprentices were suppressed by this aura. Their faces turned pale and they retreated. Lu Ming, I admit that you're very powerful. However, it's still too early for you to challenge me. Today I'll teach you how to be a human for free. You must keep a low profile. When you meet someone you can't defeat, you must tuck your tail between your legs and behave. Boom. As she spoke, Chen Yuexing's aura grew even stronger. Chen Yuexing's bloodline was at the 4th level. At this moment, Chen Yuexing's strength had reached the peak of the 8th grade Master Realm. Lightning Claw. Buzz. Chen Yuexing took a step forward and with a swoosh, she was in front of Lu Ming. The claws that were as sharp as knives clawed at Lu Ming wildly. In an instant he had struck out at least 20 times. However, Lu Ming was faster. The sound of a sword rang out. In an instant dozens of sword lights bloomed from Lu Ming's hands. It was extremely dazzling. Chi-chi. The sword chi whistled, the claw force crossed, and a strong wind gushed out in all directions. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples nearby kept retreating. Bang! Bang! Some of the chi flew out and hit the walls of the Star Moon Tower, causing the Star Moon Tower to shake even more. Ah! Suddenly there was a scream and a figure retreated. It was Chen Yuexing. A deep sword gash appeared on his shoulder, almost cutting off one of his arms. The surrounding spectators were all shocked. In less than 10 moves, Chen Yuexing had been defeated and forced to retreat with heavy injuries. Attack! Chen Yuexing roared. His heart was twitching in fear. Buzz! Buzz! The few young men who were with him rushed toward Lu Ming. As for Chen Yuexing, she was actually running away. He wanted to escape. Chen Yuexing, don't even think about running. Die! Lu Ming roared. His sword glowed brightly and it was extremely sharp. Whoosh! Whoosh! The few young men were instantly sent flying. They flew far away and crashed heavily into the wall of the Star Moon Tower. Boom! 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 This time the Star Moon Tower could no longer hold on and collapsed. Quickly retreat! Some of the disciples of the 4 courtyards who were close to him turned pale with fright and quickly retreated. Boom! 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 The entire Star Moon Tower collapsed, stirring up dust. Lu Ming's body was as fast as lightning as he dashed toward Chen Yuexing. Chen Yuexing was severely injured and her speed was greatly reduced. In a few breaths, Lu Ming had caught up to her. Lu Ming, wait a minute. We can discuss this further. What do you want? I can give you anything. Seeing that she could not escape, Chen Yuexing stopped and started to plead. At the same time, she wanted to use her benefits to stabilize Lu Ming. At the same time, he kept thinking, soon. Senior brother Yao Tianyu and the others will be here soon. When they arrive, Lu Ming, I'll see how you die. I want revenge 10 times, 100 times more. What do I want? The cold smile on Lu Ming's lips grew wider. What I want is very simple. I just want you to use twice the amount of what you have used on my brother Pang Shi. Boom! He threw a punch at Chen Yuexing's stomach. With a crack, a few of her ribs were broken. She was sent flying and coughed up blood. Next, it's your 4 limbs. Lu Ming's eyes were cold as he walked to Chen Yuexing's side. No, don't. Chen Yuexing shouted. Stop. At this time, a furious roar suddenly came from the distance. At the same time, buzz, an NBSP whoosh. Oh, one figure after another rushed over. The Enforcement Palace? It's the people from the Enforcement Palace. The leader is Yao Tianyu. It's over. This time Lu Ming is finished. The surrounding senior disciples cried out in surprise when they saw these people rushing over. Of course, some people were surprised, a few were worried, but most of them were gloating. The Tribunal Council was established by the 4 great halls. Each hall would select a few people to join the Tribunal Council to maintain the order of the mystical sword sect. Senior brother Lu Ming, the enforcement hall is here. Let's go. The skinny teenager who was saved by Lu Ming earlier shouted. Ha ha, the people from the Tribunal Council are here. Senior brother Yao Tianyu is here. Lu Ming, you're finished. How dare you break my ribs? I'll make you pay 10 times or 100 times more. Chen Yuexing's arrogance was completely restored as soon as the people from the Tribunal Council arrived. She called out coldly. Law Enforcement Hall? Hee hee. No one will be able to save you today. Lu Ming's eyes were still cold. He was unmoved. He raised his foot and stomped on Chen Yuexing's leg. The arrogance on Chen Yuexing's face disappeared and was replaced by endless fear. She wailed, no, don't. Gotcha. Lu Ming stomped his foot heavily on Chen Yuexing's leg. The bone in her leg was broken into several pieces by Lu Ming's essential qi. Ah, my leg. Senior brother Yao, save me. Chen Yuexing wailed. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming's legs were as fast as lightning and he stomped 2 more times. These 2 feet were on Chen Yuexing's other leg and arm. Chen Yuexing's leg and hand bones broke into several pieces. At this moment, the people from the Law Enforcement Hall finally arrived and surrounded Lu Ming. Oh! Chapter 80. Chapter 80. What's there to be afraid of? 549690339. I told you to stop. Did you not hear me? The person in the lead was about 17 years old. In a casual battle, he was as unmoving as a mountain. His aura was oppressive, and his eyes were filled with killing intent, like a wolf or a tiger. It's really Yao Tianyu. He's here personally. Low exclamations spread out in the surroundings. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. So this teenager was Yao Tianyu. I heard you, but why should I stop? He said calmly, his face still calm. How dare you speak to senior brother Yao like that? Lu Ming, what's with your attitude? As soon as Lu Ming finished speaking, a few youths from the Law Enforcement Hall shouted. Lu Ming pursed his lips and could not be bothered. Lu Ming, you attacked a fellow disciple for no reason. Your methods are vicious and vicious. You're simply insane. This is a serious violation of the sect rules. Now you're going to chain yourself and follow us back to the Law Enforcement Hall to accept your punishment. A young man in a red robe walked out and shouted. Then with a clang he threw a thick chain in front of Lu Ming. That's right. Lu Ming, surrender and listen to the punishment. The other youths from the Tribunal Council also shouted. I broke the sect rules. Why don't you ask me why I made a move? Lu Ming sneered. You don't have to ask much about this. Anyway, we saw you attack and severely injure your fellow disciples. You even destroyed the Star Moon Tower. This is a serious crime. The red-robed youth concluded. Let me tell you now that I am not guilty. I am only punishing the sect's vermin. The Star Moon Tower used an extremely low price to forcefully buy the materials of the new disciples. Once they refused, they would deal a heavy blow. One of my friends is still unconscious. Why don't you guys investigate this? Lu Ming said coldly. Nonsense, he's slandering us. There's no such thing. Senior brother Yao, you have to help me. Chen Yuexing's cultivation level was high, so she didn't faint. She cried out loudly. Slander? Do you think the others are blind? Lu Ming said. Oh. The red-robed young man turned to the young men from the Vermilion Bird Hall and said, Who among you saw the Star Moon Tower forcefully buying materials? He even attacked and injured someone? But I'm warning you, you'd better think carefully before you speak. Don't talk nonsense, be careful of trouble coming from your mouth. A threat. This was an undisguised threat. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples were about to tell the truth, but their expressions changed when they heard this. As for Yao Tianyu, he stood at the side. Although he did not say anything, his aura was overbearing. When he casually swept his gaze over the crowd, the disciples' faces turned even uglier. For a moment no one dared to speak. Yao Tianyu's lips curled into a sneer. The other disciples of the tribunal council followed suit. The red-robed youth said, "Lu Ming, it seems like no one can testify for you. What else do you have to say now? Why aren't you surrendering?" Hee hee. Lu Ming sneered and swept his gaze across the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples. When they saw Lu Ming's gaze, they blushed and lowered their heads in shame. But still no one spoke. "Lu Ming, what are you looking at? Was he trying to threaten them? With the tribunal council here, don't even think about it. Why don't you surrender? Was he trying to resist? Brothers, get ready to attack." The red-robed young man shouted, his eyes flashing with ruthlessness. A few days ago, he went to summon Lu Ming and was thrown out of the door by Lu Ming. He regarded it as a great humiliation. Law enforcement hall? What bullshit enforcement hall? I've learned something today. If you want to make a move, then do it. It's impossible for me to surrender. I, Lu Ming, am not afraid of a battle. Lu Ming held the long sword in his hand and stood proudly. His slender figure was like a tall and straight mountain peak, full of unyielding and unswerving determination. Before he came here today, he had already thought that Yao Tianyu might be behind all this, even though he knew that he had almost no chance of winning against those on the bronze list with his current cultivation. But he still came and did it. This was his heart. He would do what he wanted to do and what he should do. At worst, they would just fight a bloody battle. Looking at Lu Ming's figure, the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples felt even more ashamed. Wait a minute. Suddenly a voice was heard. The skinny young man who was saved by Lu Ming earlier clenched his fists tightly. His face was flushed and his body was trembling. He strode out. "I can be a witness. What senior brother Lu Ming said is true. The Star Moon Tower forcefully bought the materials of the Vermilion Bird Hall's new disciples. They only gave 1 tael of Asilavira for the 1,000 taels worth of items. If they don't obey, they will give them a good beating." There was a senior who refused to obey. He argued with Chan Yueshing and Chan Yueshing broke his bones. He was seriously injured and fell unconscious. Senior brother Lu Ming only attacked because he stood up for us. He did not break any sect rules. "Don't!" the skinny youth shouted, his voice spreading far and wide. "Shut up, how dare you!" the red-robed young man suddenly shouted, interrupting the skinny young man's next words. He then stared coldly at the skinny youth and said in a deep voice, "Brat, how dare you? I can tell that you're Lu Ming's accomplice. How dare you help Lu Ming to bring disaster to the sect? You even tried to deceive the law enforcement hall. Your crime is unforgivable. Today you're with Lu Ming, so you can't escape your punishment." The skinny young man's face turned pale and his voice trembled. "No, you can't do this. I'm telling the truth. No need to talk nonsense, attack." At this moment, Yao Tianyu finally opened his mouth. He was decisive and direct. "Junior brother, you should step back." Lu Ming waved his palm and essential qi gushed out. The thin teenager retreated into the crowd. Lu Ming was facing the law enforcement hall alone. He didn't say anything, but the unyielding battle intent on his body explained everything. Fight to the end. Let's attack together and take down Lu Ming. It's fine as long as we don't kill him. The red-robed youth shouted. Buzz! An NBSP whoosh! Oh! At that moment, more than 10 youths from the law enforcement hall pounced on Lu Ming. The sword chi, palm wind and fist force instantly enveloped Lu Ming's entire body. The disciples of the tribunal council were all very strong. Even the weakest of them was a 6th grade master realm. Ultimate flowing light. Buzz! The sound of the sword rang out, and the sword light burst forth. The sword chi burst out. Lu Ming charged into the crowd. Clang! Clang! Boom! Boom! The sounds of clashing and explosions rang out. Then a few figures retreated. It was the disciples of the Tribunal Council. They had all been stabbed in the chest with a wound that went straight to their bones. They fell heavily to the ground and coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. The disciples of the 4 courtyards were shocked. Lu Ming was too domineering. Not only did he start a war with the people of the Law Enforcement Hall, but he also injured a few experts of the Law Enforcement Hall in one move. Strong, he was too strong. One had to know that there were many 8th grade Master Realm experts in the Tribunal Council. "Let's go together," the red-robed young man shouted from the side. Buzz. An NBSP whoosh. Oh! More Enforcement Hall disciples rushed toward Lu Ming. This time there were over 30 Enforcement Palace disciples. "Kill!" Lu Ming roared with an imposing manner. He had his eyes on the red-robed disciple and rushed in that direction. Oh! Chapter 81. Chapter 81. The Power of 8 Consecutive Wins. 549690339. However, he was surrounded by nearly 30 Enforcement Palace disciples. In an instant, all kinds of attacks were launched at Lu Ming. There was no way to dodge. Bloodline explosion. Lu Ming did not hesitate and immediately activated his blood meridian. Lu Ming's blood meridian exploded and his combat strength increased by a large margin. He directly ignored most of the attacks. As long as he avoided the physical attacks of the long sword and the saber, he would be fine. Boom! 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 Streams of sword chi, saber chi, and fist force all landed on Lu Ming's body. However, Lu Ming's body only swayed slightly, and he continued to slash out with the star sword. The lustrous sword technique was extremely fast, and he slashed dozens of times in an instant. Ah! Ah! Screams rang out continuously as 7 to 8 figures were sent flying. All of them were heavily injured and fell to the ground. Kill! Lu Ming was in a frenzy. The essential chi in his body was so condensed that it was almost tangible, and it burst out continuously. His blood meridian level was currently at level 4, and the time for his blood meridian to burst out was only 5 breaths. In these 5 breaths he was extremely powerful. Whoosh! Whoosh! The heavenly star sword kept slashing out, and the screams continued. One figure after another kept flying out. Bang! Bang! The disciples of the Tribunal Council were like sandbags as they fell to the ground one after another. The surrounding disciples of the 4 courtyards were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out. Monster, monster! Isn't Lu Ming too powerful? How long has he been in this sect? And did you guys see that? He actually ignored the attacks. He must have some kind of defensive treasure on him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to withstand so many attacks. That's right. There must be a defensive treasure. Lu Ming is actually not that powerful. He relied on the defensive treasure to catch the Law Enforcement Hall off guard. Look, he's injured. The senior disciples of the 4 courtyards were in a heated discussion. Although they felt that Lu Ming must have relied on a defensive treasure, their eyes were still filled with shock. Poochie! Lu Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. 5 breaths had passed, and more than 20 Enforcement Palace's disciples had been severely injured by him. They were no longer able to fight. However, he had taken so many attacks head-on. Even though he had devoured half of the attacks, he was still injured. He's injured, kill him! The remaining Enforcement Hall disciples roared and continued to pounce on Lu Ming. Clang! A tall and thin young man exchanged a blow with Lu Ming. Lu Ming trembled and could not help but take a step back. 9th grade Master Realm. Finally, a 9th grade Master Realm expert from the Tribunal Council made his move. As soon as Lu Ming retreated, the rest of the people rushed forward. During this entire process, Yao Tianyu had no intention of making a move. He continued to stand at the side, watching coldly. It seemed that Lu Ming was not worthy of him to take action personally. Beside Yao Tianyu there was another young man. He was as strong as an iron tower, but he did not make a move either. So what if you're a 9th grade Master Realm? Kill! Lu Ming attacked more than 10 times in a row, forcing the others to retreat. Then, he fought with the 9th grade Master Realm expert. In an instant, the two exchanged more than a dozen moves. Tongue. Thump. After a dozen moves, the ninth-grade Master Realm youth's expression changed drastically, and he retreated a dozen steps. Buzz. Lu Ming took a step forward and rushed toward the red-robed young man. Now it's your turn. Lu Ming's eyes were cold and murderous. The red-robed youth was scared out of his wits. So many tribunal council experts and they could not stop Lu Ming? How was this possible? Senior brother Yao, save me. He couldn't help but shout. Yao Tianyu frowned and said, He Tai, attack. Yes. The iron tower-like young man behind him responded, and then he stomped on the ground. Boom. The ground shook, and the hard floor cracked. The iron tower youth's body was shot out like a cannonball. Fast, extremely fast. He was even faster than Lu Ming when he used the dragon serpent steps. He was near Lu Ming in an instant. He threw a punch and the violent fist force surged toward Lu Ming. So strong. Lu Ming's heart trembled. The Iron Tower young man's punch gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. Without any hesitation, he used all his true chi and slashed at the Iron Tower young man. Boom! The Iron Tower young man's fist heavily hit the star sword. In that instant, Lu Ming felt as if he had been hit by a huge mountain. The force was unstoppable. Lu Ming's body shook violently and he was sent flying. Lu Ming flew more than 10 meters before landing on the ground. Then he took 8 steps back. With each step, the floor cracked and rumbled. After 8 steps, Lu Ming finally stopped and spat out a mouthful of blood. He Tai, it's He Tai who made a move. He Tai is a genius expert who won 8 consecutive victories on the bronze platform. He's not far from the bronze ranking. With him, Lu Ming is doomed this time. That's right. Lu Ming and He Tai are too different. Seeing the Iron Tower youth's attack, someone cried out in shock. 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform? It is indeed powerful. Lu Ming looked at He Tai, who was in front of him, with a grave expression. If the disciples of the mystical sword sect wanted to enter the bronze ranking, they had to go up to the bronze platform and accept challenges. Only those who won 10 consecutive rounds could be ranked on the bronze list. He Tai, on the other hand, had already won 8 matches in a row. He only needed to win 2 more times in a row before he could enter the bronze rank. Of course, it wasn't that easy because the further one went, the more difficult it would be, and the stronger the people they would meet. But 8 consecutive wins, his strength was also very strong. It's not bad that you can take a punch from me, but I advise you to surrender. You and I are far apart. He Tai said indifferently. Aha, if you want to fight, then fight. You want me to surrender without putting up a fight? Impossible. Lu Ming wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and laughed. You're so stubborn. Boom. He Tai charged at Lu Ming and threw another punch. This punch was even more powerful than the previous one. Lu Ming's pupils constricted. He did not take the attack head-on. Instead, he used the dragon serpent steps and dodged to the side. You can't avoid it. He Tai stomped on the ground heavily, causing the floor to crack. He was like a wild beast charging towards Lu Ming. He threw another punch. It was extremely fast. He could not avoid this punch. If he couldn't avoid it, then he would take it head-on. Lu Ming circulated the true war dragon technique to the extreme. His essential chi surged wildly as he slashed out. The heavenly star sword and He Tai's fist collided once again. Boom! Lu Ming's sword aura was defeated in an instant. The difference was too great. They were not even on the same level. He Tai's combat strength was too strong. Although he was also a 9th grade master, ordinary 9th grade master realm cultivators were trash in front of him. He could defeat them with a single punch. With Lu Ming's current combat strength, he could definitely fight an ordinary 9th grade master realm expert without activating his blood meridian. However, he was still far from He Tai. Bang! Lu Ming was sent flying backward. He slid for dozens of meters before he stopped. Lu Ming spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was pale and his body was staggering as if he could fall down at any moment. Is this the strength of a true genius of the mystical sword sect? It's really powerful. Lu Ming secretly sighed. Oh. Chapter 82. Chapter 82. Chapter 82. Persistent Battle. 549690339. During the newbie trial he had defeated all the other geniuses and won the newbie king title. At that time he thought that the other geniuses were only SOSO, but now that he thought about it he was wrong. The other geniuses among the newcomers weren't too weak. They were just too young and immature. They just hadn't matured yet. Perhaps in a few years some people would also grow to be very powerful. Capture him. He Tai waved his hand and said. Lu Ming was already seriously injured. He did not need to do anything. Let's see how you're going to resist now. The remaining dozen or so enforcement hall disciples walked toward Lu Ming with ferocious looks on their faces. Lu Ming had injured more than 20 of them. They were both fearful and hateful of Lu Ming. Hee. Lu Ming supported himself with his long sword. He scanned his surroundings and sneered. What are you laughing at? You'll get it when we get to the law enforcement palace. A skinny monkey-like young man laughed hideously and clawed at Lu Ming's head. He wanted to press Lu Ming's head to the ground and humiliate him. But dash. Whoosh. A sword light flashed and a few streams of blood shot out. There were 5 fingers in the blood. Skinny Monkey looked at his bare palm in a daze, then let out a heart-wrenching scream. Ah, my finger. Lu Ming, I want you to die. Of course Lu Ming was the one who slashed her just now. Go, let's attack together. The others roared. There were 10 of them, including a 9th-grade Master Realm expert. One attack after another was directed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming raised his essential chi with great effort and waved his sword to block the attack. Clang! Clang! After a few consecutive moves, Lu Ming's body kept retreating. With a swish, he was struck by a sword and blood immediately flowed out. Lu Ming, lie down and surrender. A young man from the Tribunal Council shouted. In your dreams. The only response they got was 2 simple words. Then I'll beat you until you lie down. Whoosh, whoosh. The attacks continued to surge toward Lu Ming. These Tribunal Council disciples were all experts. At this time, Lu Ming was severely injured and it was difficult for him to withstand the attacks. After a few moves, a few more wounds appeared on his body and blood flowed out. Lu Ming's entire body was stained red with blood. His steps were light and he seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. However, he still stood tall and straight. His eyes were still firm and persistent. At this moment the entire place was silent, and the air seemed to have frozen at this moment. No one spoke as they stared at the figure in a daze. Senior brother Lu Ming. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples clenched their fists and their eyes turned red. Their eyes were filled with guilt. They felt guilty for not standing up for them earlier. They all knew that the reason why Lu Ming came here and tore down the Star Moon Tower was to avenge Pang Shi. For his friends, for his brothers to be able to do this was a true man. Compared to Lu Ming, they felt that they were too inferior. Stop, stop! The skinny youth roared and suddenly charged forward. Pa! The red-robed young man suddenly rushed out and slapped the thin young man, sending him flying. He said arrogantly, Get lost, you'll get it later. Then, he looked at Lu Ming and laughed. Lu Ming, weren't you very arrogant just now? Why? Now I can't, I don't have any strength. Come and hit me, haha. Bang! As soon as the red-robed young man finished speaking, he was slapped hard on the face. This slap was extremely loud and extremely ruthless. The red-robed young man's body spun a few times before coming to a stop. One side of his face was almost smashed, and blood was spurting out of his teeth. He was so stunned that he even forgot to scream. He looked at the person who hit him in a daze. It was a woman, an extremely alluring and sexy woman with an extremely good figure. However, her expression was extremely cold. Mulan. A name flashed through the red-robed youth's mind. Mulan had finally arrived. No one could see how she had arrived. Since you're asking for a beating, I'll definitely fulfill your wish. Mulan's cold voice was heard. She then waved her hand. Pa! Another slap landed on the other side of the red-robed young man's face. Blood was still spurting out because all the teeth had been spat out. The red-robed young man did not fly out. He was pulled by a force and spun a dozen times on the spot before he stopped. It was clear how powerful the slap was. The moment he stopped, he saw Mulan's cold face again. His heart trembled and he almost peed his pants. He shouted, "Fu Shaoa." His mouth was leaking air, and he couldn't even speak clearly. "Get lost." Bang! Mulan kicked the red-robed young man and sent him flying more than 10 meters. He screamed and fainted. Not far away, Yao Tianyu, who had been very calm all this while, was no longer calm. He looked at Mulan with a grave expression. The people from the law enforcement hall did not dare to make a move either. They looked at Mulan with a grave expression. Mulan did not even look at the others. She walked to Lu Ming's side and said with a concerned expression, "Are you all right?" "It's fine, I won't die yet. I owe you another favor this time." Lu Ming smiled faintly. "You can still smile? Quickly take this pill." Mulan took out a pill and passed it to Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not stand on ceremony. He took it and swallowed it in one mouthful. The pill melted in his mouth and turned into waves of energy that permeated Lu Ming's entire body. His wound quickly stopped bleeding. Such a strong medicinal effect. This healing medicinal pill's grade was definitely not low. At this moment, Mulan turned to Yao Tianyu and said coldly, "You're good. You dare to attack the Vermilion Bird Hall's disciples." "Elder Mulan." Yao Tianyu's expression turned ugly. He cupped his fists and said, "Elder Mulan, we're enforcing the law impartially." Lu Ming relied on his high cultivation base to injure dozens of people from the Star Moon Tower for no reason. He even forcefully demolished the Star Moon Tower. Of course, the law enforcement hall has to severely punish such an unruly and reckless disciple. But Lu Ming is insane. Not only did he resist arrest, but he also injured so many people from the law enforcement hall. "Elder Mulan, as the chief elder of the Vermilion Bird Hall, I hope you won't shield him." "Nonsense." The skinny youth's face was swollen after being slapped by the red-robed youth. He walked out resolutely and said, "It's obvious that the Star Moon Tower forcefully bought the materials for the Vermilion Bird Hall's new apprentices. They even beat people up. Senior brother Lu Ming is fighting for us and seeking justice. How is this against the sect rules?" "That's right, senior brother Lu Ming is seeking justice for us." A few more new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples walked out. With Mulan's arrival, they were emboldened and couldn't hold it in any longer, so they told the truth. "You're talking nonsense. How could the Star Moon Tower do such a thing?" Yao Tianyu asked in a low voice. "If they did, the Tribunal Council would have punished them long ago. Moreover, you said that you only bought the Vermilion Bird Hall by force. That's even more ridiculous. Does the Star Moon Tower have any enmity with the Vermilion Bird Hall? I think it's obvious that the few of you are in cahoots with Lu Ming. You want to frame the Star Moon Tower." Oh. Chapter 83. Chapter 83. Chapter 83 Not Qualified. 549690339. No, we're just telling the truth. The Vermilion Bird Hall disciples quickly explained. "All right, I'm done." Mulan waved her hand, then looked at Yao Tianyu and said, "Now I'll tell you clearly. I don't care who Lu Ming hit or whose house he demolished. I don't care about all these. If I say that Lu Ming is innocent, he is innocent. If I say he's not guilty, he's not guilty. So domineering, so overbearing." This was Mulan. She was completely unreasonable when she was domineering. "You." Instantly, Yao Tianyu's face turned red and he almost suffered internal injuries. Mulan didn't play by the rules at all, yet he couldn't do anything to her. "Elder Mulan, even though you're an elder of the Vermilion Bird Hall and the granddaughter of Din Yen, you can't just use your power to bully others, can you? There are so many disciples here watching." After holding it in for a long time, Yao Tianyu finally managed to squeeze out this sentence. "I'm just bullying people, so what?" Mulan replied indifferently. Yao Tianyu trembled in anger. Good. If that's the case, I'll report this to the elders of the Tribunal Council. Let's go. Mulan's arrival was extremely domineering. Yao Tianyu knew that it was impossible to take down Lu Ming today. After leaving behind a harsh sentence, he turned around and left. Who said you can leave? Mulan's cold voice was heard. Yao Tianyu's figure paused. He looked at Mulan and gritted his teeth. Elder Mulan, what's your order? You injured him and want to leave just like that. Isn't that too easy? Leave behind the medical expenses? I think it will take at least 1 or 2 million taels of Esilavir to fully recover from this kind of injury. Mulan's gaze wandered all over Lu Ming as she said slowly. Medical expenses? 1 or 2 million taels. All around, the onlookers were stunned. Some of them dug their ears hard, thinking that they had heard wrong. Even Lu Ming was in a daze. Mulan was asking for an exorbitant price. As expected, Yao Tianyu couldn't hold it in any longer and roared, medical expenses? Mulan, don't go too far. Lu Ming injured so many of our people? I didn't even ask him for medical fees and you're asking me for it? Impossible, I'm telling you it's impossible. Injured your people? They deserve it. Let me tell you, if you don't pay for the medical expenses today, I don't mind breaking your bones one by one. Mulan said coldly. He was too domineering and overbearing. He did not give Yao Tianyu any face at all. No, it was not that he did not give Yao Tianyu any face, but he did not put him in his eyes at all. Yao Tianyu's expression was extremely ugly. Although he was a genius on the bronze rank, he was only a bronze disciple. If he were to fight Mulan, he would definitely be killed with a single slap. His face turned green and white. If he were to give in today and pay for the medical expenses, he would really lose all his face. Haha, niece Mulan, in my opinion, let's just drop this matter. At this moment a deep voice was heard. A figure descended from the sky. It was an old man in his 60s. He was wearing a Esilavira robe and had a kind smile on his face. He was a Esilavira robed elder. Upon seeing the old man, Yao Tianyu was overjoyed and shouted, Elder Ming, you must seek justice for this disciple. Elder Mulan has gone too far. This Esilavira robed elder was from the Azure Dragon Hall. Mulan's expression darkened as well. She said, Old man Ming, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. The people in the surroundings were dumbfounded again. Mulan was too awesome, wasn't she? She called a Esilavira robed elder an old man. However, Elder Ming did not show any signs of anger. He still smiled and said, I have already heard about the entire incident. I think that there is a huge misunderstanding. According to my speculation, the Star Moon Tower is the one who is in the wrong. The Star Moon Tower forcefully bought their disciples' materials. Lu Ming fought for justice and injured their disciples. As members of the enforcement hall, Yao Tianyu and the rest naturally had to question Lu Ming when they saw him injuring someone. This caused a fight. This is a complete misunderstanding. Since both parties have people injured, I think we should just let this matter go. Lu Ming's heart trembled. Elder Ming was sacrificing the war chariot to protect the general. This Elder Ming looked kind, but in fact, he was a cunning old fox. He pushed all the blame to the Star Moon Tower with just one sentence. In this way, Yao Tianyu would not have to pay for the medical expenses, and Yao Tianyu and the others would have nothing to say to the elder of the tribunal council. Yao Tianyu's face darkened, but he did not say anything. If this matter was really investigated, it would be impossible to hide the fact that the Star Moon Tower had forcefully bought the materials for the Vermilion Bird Hall's new disciples. Therefore, it would be good if they could push the blame on the Star Moon Tower. Mulan's eyes flickered. This Elder Ming was a Esilavira robed elder. If he was bent on protecting Yao Tianyu, she would be helpless. Oh, since it's the Star Moon Tower's fault, they must be severely punished. Otherwise, the disciples of the 4 courtyards will not be convinced. Mulan's eyes flickered before she smiled. Of course, the Star Moon Tower will definitely punish them severely. All the materials will also be returned. Elder Ming smiled, then said to Yao Tianyu, Tianyu, why haven't you brought the disciples of the Tribunal Council back to recuperate yet? Yes. Yao Tianyu cupped his fists and ordered the uninjured disciples to help the injured disciples back to their rooms. Lu Ming. Then Yao Tianyu cast a cold glance at Lu Ming, turned around and left. Yao Tianyu. Lu Ming suddenly called out. Yao Tianyu stopped in his tracks. He turned around and glared at Lu Ming coldly. Lu Ming's eyes glowed as he stared at Yao Tianyu. Yao Tianyu, what kind of skill do you have to call these minions to attack me? I'm challenging you right now. Do you dare to accept my challenge? As soon as he said that, the entire place fell into silence. Lu Ming actually challenged Yao Tianyu? How was that possible? How could he be a match for Yao Tianyu? You want to challenge me? Yao Tianyu retorted. Not bad, yes. Lu Ming replied firmly. Yao Tianyu's lips curled into a mocking smile as he said disdainfully, Lu Ming, I'm a disciple on the bronze ranking. What right do you have to challenge me? You can challenge me after you've made it to the bronze rank. You're not qualified to do so now. Yao Tianyu's eyes were filled with arrogance and disdain. With that, he turned around and left. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. Are you disdainful to accept my challenge? Lu Ming could not help but clench his fists. Lu Ming, don't think too much about it. This is the rule of the mystical sword sect. If you want to challenge a disciple on the bronze list, you must be on the bronze list as well. Only then will you be qualified. Otherwise, you don't have the right to challenge them. Seeing this, Mulan started explaining to Lu Ming. I see. Lu Ming muttered. However, Yao Tianyu's condescending and disdainful look just now could not be removed from Lu Ming's mind. The bronze ranking? I'll get there soon. Yao Tianyu, just you wait. Lu Ming clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with determination. Lu Ming, are you all right? Lu Ming, how are you? Only then did Feng Wu and Hua Qi arrive, panting. Oh. Chapter 84. Chapter 84, Healing. 549690339. I'm fine. Lu Ming smiled. However, the two of them still looked at Lu Ming in shock. This was because Lu Ming was completely drenched in blood. He looked like a man made of blood. Hua Qi, in particular, had a complicated look in his eyes besides shock. He was touched and admired. By the way, how's Peng Shi? Lu Ming asked with some worry. He's fine. The alchemist has already set his bones back and fed him some healing pills. He should be fine. Hua Qi said. That's good. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Suddenly, his body swayed and his face turned pale. Lu Ming, what's wrong? Mulan, Feng Wu, and Hua Qi were all shocked. It seems that I have to recuperate on the spot. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Lu Ming immediately sat cross-legged and circulated the true war dragon technique to begin healing. Detestable. Hua Qi growled. Lu Ming could not even go back to recuperate, which showed the severity of his injuries. After that, Hua Qi, Feng Wu, and Mulan all stood close to Lu Ming to protect him. The surrounding onlookers watched for a while before leaving. The news of this battle spread like wildfire throughout the entire mystical sword sect. After hearing this news, everyone had different reactions. Some people scoffed and thought that Lu Ming was a reckless man who did things impulsively and did not care about the consequences. It was unwise to fight even though he knew that he was no match. However, some people were full of praise for Lu Ming. They felt that Lu Ming was loyal, had a firm path of martial arts, and had an indomitable will to advance bravely. On the path of martial arts, one should be fearless and attack when needed. If one had to look around, even be afraid of the slightest thing, and swallow one's anger, then what was the point of practicing martial arts and cultivation? Anyway, there were all kinds of theories. Of course, Lu Ming was unaware of this. He was fully focused on healing his injuries. The healing process took 6 hours. When Lu Ming opened his eyes, it was already evening. Lu Ming, are you feeling better? Mulan was the first to notice that Lu Ming had woken up. She asked hurriedly. Much better. Lu Ming smiled. After 12 hours of healing, his injuries had basically stabilized. As long as he could hold on for a while, he would be completely healed. Feng Wu and Hua Qi hurried to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming's heart was filled with warmth. He knew that while he was recuperating, the few of them had been by his side. However, there was a skinny youth who didn't leave either. He was watching from a distance. Let's go back, Lu Ming said. Then, he walked to the skinny youth and asked, What's your name? Lu. Senior brother Lu, I'm Li Yi. The skinny youth said excitedly. Li Yi, thank you for this. Lu Ming smiled. No, senior brother Lu Ming, I should be the one thanking you. Li Yi said hurriedly. Let's go back to the Vermilion Bird Hall together. Lu Ming smiled faintly. The few of them headed toward the Vermilion Bird Hall. Not long after, Lu Ming and the rest had returned to the dormitory. After Lu Ming returned, he did not return to his room. Instead, he walked into Pang Shi's room. Pang Shi was lying on the bed, his entire body wrapped in bandages. His legs and arms were also in casts. At this moment, Pang Shi had already woken up. When he saw Lu Ming entering, he struggled to get up and shouted, Senior brother Lu Ming, are you all right? Don't move, just lie down and rest. Lu Ming hurriedly stopped Pang Shi from moving and smiled. Don't worry, I'm fine. Senior brother Lu Ming, I'm sorry. It's all my fault that you're so badly injured. Pang Shi said with tears in his eyes. He had heard about Lu Ming's battle. After all, it had been more than 6 hours. I should be the one saying sorry. Yao Tianyu and the others' target is me, but they implicated you. Lu Ming said. No, it's not Senior Lu Ming's fault. It's all my fault for being too weak. Otherwise, I wouldn't have implicated you, Senior Lu Ming. Pang Shi said. His eyes were filled with self-blame and determination. All right, Big Rock, don't think too much. Have a good rest. Lu Ming smiled and patted Pang Shi. He then walked out of Pang Shi's room. After returning to his room, Lu Ming entered the Supreme Shrine. The armor of the red-scaled snake is so broken. He took off all his clothes and looked at the tattered red-scaled snake armor in his hands. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. This time, if he didn't have the red-scaled snake armor as a layer of protection, he would have been more seriously injured. After changing into a new set of clothes, Lu Ming went out to fetch some water to wash his body clean. He then returned to the Supreme Shrine and continued to channel his energy to heal his injuries. Time flew by and 7 days quickly passed. 7 days later, Lu Ming practiced a set of fist techniques in the courtyard and exercised his muscles and bones. After 7 days, my injuries have healed. Lu Ming sensed it and thought to himself. His eyes flashed with joy. He realized that the true qi cultivated from the true war dragon technique was not only rich and condensed, but it also had a very good healing effect. An ordinary person would need at least a month to recover from such an injury. However, he only used 7 days. A god-grade cultivation technique was indeed very useful. Squeak! Just then the door was pushed open and Feng Wu walked in. Lu Ming, how's your recovery? I've brought you some medicinal wine, do you want to try it? Feng Wu smiled brightly. I've already recovered. Lu Ming said with a smile. Ah! The smile froze on Feng Wu's face. She looked at Lu Ming as if he was a monster. It's only been 7 days and you've already recovered. Yeah, what's so strange about that? Don't you know that I'm a genius? Lu Ming waved his hand, and it cut through the air with a loud whistling sound. He then looked at Feng Wu with a smug face. Genius? How can a genius be beaten up like this? Feng Wu pursed her lips in disdain, but there was still shock in her eyes. He recovered in 7 days, what a monster. By the way, Feng Wu, can you tell me more about the bronze list? How strong are the geniuses on the bronze list? Lu Ming asked. The bronze ranking? He's very strong. Feng Wu's face turned grim at the mention of the bronze list. As you know, you have to win 10 matches in a row on the bronze platform before you can be ranked on the bronze list. It's not easy to win 10 matches in a row. The higher you go, the more difficult it will be. For example, after you win 8 matches in a row, you will have to face an opponent who has also won 8 matches in a row in the 9th match. After winning 9 matches in a row, you will have to face an opponent who has also won 9 matches in a row. Therefore, it is really difficult to win 10 matches in a row. That's why the geniuses on the bronze list are all extremely powerful. They can defeat warriors of the same level with one move as easily as eating and drinking. I heard that most of the geniuses on the bronze list have successfully cultivated at least one black-level low-rank martial technique. Even if they didn't successfully cultivate a black-level martial arts technique, they would have mastered some secret technique, and some might even have cultivated the path of body refinement. Fengwu explained in detail. Oh. Chapter 85. Chapter 85. Practicing the spear with the waterfall. 549690339. How many people are on the bronze list? Lu Ming asked. 56 people, excluding the Qilin Hall. There are a total of 56 geniuses from the 4 halls who have made it onto the bronze list. Fengwu said. Only 56 people. Lu Ming muttered. The mystical sword sect would recruit a batch of disciples every year, and as long as they were not over 30 years old, they would be considered as disciples. After so many years, the mystical sword sect had more than 50,000 bronze disciples. There were more than 50,000 people, but only 56 of them were geniuses on the bronze list. One had to know that those who could join the mystical sword sect had to go through a series of examinations. It was a sign of talent, and 1 in 100 was chosen. It was obvious how talented the geniuses on the bronze list were. What's Yao Tianyu's ranking? Lu Ming asked again. 51st. Fengwu's eyes flickered as she scrutinized Lu Ming. You're not really thinking of challenging Yao Tianyu, are you? He joined the mystical sword sect 2 years ago, and I heard that he was a strong contender for the newcomer king during the newcomer's trial. Although he failed, his talent cannot be underestimated. Although he's ranked 51st, his abilities have improved very quickly. I believe that he'll continue to rise. Lu Ming, it won't be a problem for you to defeat him in another year. But it's still too early this year. Fengwu, since you don't trust me that much, how about we make a bet? I'll bet on whether I can defeat Yao Tianyu in 4 months. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Oh, what are we betting on? Fengwu said. What are we betting on? Let me think. Lu Ming touched his chin. Then his eyes wandered all over Fengwu's body. From time to time he would even let out a sigh. Fengwu's pretty face turned red. She glared at Lu Ming and shouted, Lu Ming, you're shameless, don't even think about it. Fengwu, why are you scolding me? I just wanted to bet on a big meal to see if you have that much money. You see, my thoughts are not pure, right? Lu Ming looked surprised. You? Fengwu's face turned even redder, all the way to her ears. She glared at Lu Ming and said fiercely, fine, I'll take the bet. If I don't rip you off, my name isn't Fengwu. Having said that, he threw a jar of medicinal wine at Lu Ming and left in a huff. Ha ha ha. Lu Ming laughed heartily. It was quite interesting to tease the beauty Fengwu occasionally. He opened the wine jar and gulped down a few mouthfuls. Lu Ming began to consider his future cultivation path. It's too slow to cultivate the basic gun technique like this. If this continues, I don't know when I'll be able to cultivate the fire-controlling gun technique. I need to use external forces to speed up the cultivation of the basic gun technique. If one wanted to be on the bronze list, he had to master a profound-level martial arts technique. There it is. Lu Ming was deep in thought when his eyes suddenly lit up. Immediately, he gulped down the entire jar of medicinal wine. It's really good wine, but it's a pity that it has a medicinal smell and lacks a lot of flavor. Lu Ming clicked his tongue and walked out. The first place he went to was the contribution hall. He exchanged the 2 million taels of Esilavira for contribution points, so he had a total of 20,000 contribution points. He only had a few 100,000 Esilavira on him. In addition to his previous contribution points, he had a total of 25,500 contribution points. Then he started to exchange for the demonic beast blood essence. He was going to exchange for the blood essence of a Class 8 Level 2 demonic beast. A portion of 8th grade 2nd level demonic beast blood essence was worth 800 contribution points. Lu Ming exchanged for 20 sets, which cost him 16,000 contribution points. It was too expensive. Lu Ming's heart twitched a few times. He had wanted to exchange for some Class 9 Level 2 demonic beast blood essence, but it cost 1,600 contribution points per portion. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He could only put it aside for the time being. After exchanging for the demonic beast blood essence, Lu Ming left the mystical sword sect and headed east. The layout of the mystical sword sect was rather peculiar. The 4 halls occupied the 4 most majestic mountains in the north, south, east, and west. The central region was an even wider region. In this area there was not only Qilin Hall, but also the Hall of Mission, the Hall of Contribution, the Bronze Platform, and other important places in the mystical sword sect. Further north of the Onyx Tortoise Hall was the core area of the mystical sword sect. The sect leader, golden-robed elders, golden-ranked disciples, and a portion of Asilavira-robed elders were all cultivating in this area. It was the core of the mystical sword sect's power. The east side of the Azure Dragon Hall was connected to a vast mountain range. This mountain range was known as the Coastal Mountain Range. It was vast and boundless, and countless demonic beasts lived in it. It was said that beyond the mountain range by the sea was the Endless Sea. It could be said that the Blazing Sun Empire was at the easternmost part of the entire Divine Wilderness continent. Lu Ming wanted to go to the mountain range by the sea. He wanted to look for an advantageous position to cultivate his spear technique. It was impossible for Lu Ming to go deep into the mountain range along the coast. He was only at the periphery. 2 days later, Lu Ming was about 200 miles deep. Boom! 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 A waterfall rumbled. The water fell from a height of more than 1,000 meters, forming a huge impact that shook everything within a few hundred meters. This is the place. I'll use this waterfall to cultivate. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Then Lu Ming took out his fire pattern gun and walked slowly toward the waterfall from the side. The Asilavira water column fell from a height of over 1,000 meters, and its momentum was extremely shocking. The closer they got, the more they could feel the majestic power. To practice the spear, the first step is to practice spear wielding. Only when you hold the spear steadily will you be able to grasp the other basic spear techniques. Then Lu Ming grabbed the end of the spear with one hand, stretched his hand straight, and extended the body of the spear into the waterfall. The moment the body of the spear was washed by the water from the waterfall, Lu Ming felt an extremely strong pressure pressing on the body of the spear. He bent his wrist and threw the long spear down. With a burst of true qi, he pulled the spear back with great force. What a strong force! It's not stable at all. However, this is also a good place to cultivate. Continue. Lu Ming's eyes were bright and determined. He continued to extend the spear, and true energy continued to flow into the spear. This time, he managed to hold on for 2 more breaths before the spear was thrown down by the waterfall. Continue. Continue. Lu Ming was not discouraged. He started to cultivate again and again. Lu Ming realized that cultivating the way he held the spear consumed a terrifying amount of essential qi. Every once in a while, Lu Ming would have to stand aside and circulate the true war dragon technique to recover his essential qi. Of course, there were also benefits to this. Every time his genuine qi was squeezed dry, he would cultivate and replenish it. This would make his genuine qi more condensed and his foundation more stable. During this period, Lu Ming would occasionally devour and refine a portion of demonic beast blood essence. His cultivation level was rapidly improving. 7 days later, Lu Ming could already hold the spear for more than 10 minutes in the waterfall. However, it was very unstable and the long spear swayed back and forth in the water. However, this was already a huge improvement. For another 7 days, the long spear in the waterfall was stable. No matter how the water of the waterfall hit it, the long spear did not move at all. Oh! Chapter 86. Chapter 86. Southern Ridge Fire Field. 549690339. At this stage, Lu Ming cultivated the basic spear technique and made rapid progress. His thrust was as steady as a mountain, and he could even stab a fly in the air. On the third 7 days, Lu Ming even tied a stone weighing 100 caddies to the tip of the spear. Carrying the 100-pound stone, Lu Ming practiced spear wielding in the waterfall. Just like that, a month passed. After a month of hard work, Lu Ming had finally cultivated the basic spear technique to an extremely profound level. He held the spear in his hand and stood still like a mountain. After a month of excruciating cultivation and refining all 20 portions of demonic beast blood essence, Lu Ming's cultivation level had improved at an amazing speed. He had already reached the peak of the 7th grade master realm, and he wasn't far from the 8th grade master realm. As the 20 portions of blood essence were devoured and refined in a month, Lu Ming's cultivation level was very stable. Now I can start to practice the fire gun art. Lu Ming entered the supreme shrine, took out the fire gun controlling art, and began to read it carefully. The fire gun skill was a fire attribute gun skill, and was divided into 6 moves. Fire dance of the fire gun art, broken armor, moon pull, lightning chase, landslide, explosion. Of the 6 moves, other than the move of explosion, the other 5 moves did not have any difference in strength. The only difference was in the way the spear was used. The only difference was in the degree of maturity and comprehension. After observing it carefully, Lu Ming began to cultivate. At the end of the stairs, there was a faintly discernible palace. The sound of chanting continuously rang out, clearing Lu Ming's mind. He quickly comprehended the martial arts technique. Whoosh and NBSP buzz. The sound of the spear piercing through the air, as well as the vibration of the spear itself, resounded throughout the supreme shrine. He cultivated like this for half a month. In the forest, Lu Ming's figure moved unhindered. The fire-patterned spear danced in his hands, like a fire dragon rolling. Whoa! Lu Ming suddenly thrust his spear. Fire gun art, broken armor. The long spear pierced through the air with unparalleled speed, like a bolt of lightning stabbing towards a 2-meter-tall boulder. At the tip of the spear, a spinning cutting force was produced. Bang! The huge rock was pierced through by the fire-patterned spear like it was tofu. Fire gun art, mountain crash. And NBSP. Suddenly, the fire-patterned spear shook, and the body of the spear flickered, creating a vibrating force. Boom! The huge rock exploded right in the middle, sending debris flying. I finally reached the first level of the fire gun art. I've just gotten a glimpse of it. Lu Ming's face was filled with joy. As expected of a black-grade low-level martial arts technique, it was extremely powerful. Lu Ming felt that its power had already surpassed the lustrous sword technique, even though he had only cultivated the first stage. After all, the lustrous sword technique had been stuck at the 5th level, and it was difficult to break through. The first level of the fire gun technique was equivalent to the 6th level of the lustrous sword technique. Generally speaking, it was very difficult to successfully cultivate a black-level martial skill without the cultivation of a great martial master. For example, the Zhu family's patriarch Zhu Bing had only managed to cultivate to the 1st level after decades of cultivation. Lu Ming, on the other hand, had cultivated to the 1st level in just half a month. This was inseparable from the effect of the chanting. Oh, of course, without Lu Ming's hard work in cultivating the basic gun technique a month ago, it would be impossible for him to master the fire gun control technique so quickly. Then he continued to cultivate. 7 days later, Lu Ming was sitting cross-legged on a green rock, frowning in deep thought. It's still lacking a little. It doesn't feel very smooth. After this period of cultivation, he realized that he was still a little bit short of comprehending the essence of the fire gun controlling art. If he cultivated in this way, even with the help of the chanting, the cultivation progress would not reach the level that Lu Ming was satisfied with. Maybe it's because of the environment. The fire gun art belongs to the fire attribute. I should go to a place full of fire attribute spiritual qi to cultivate, then I can be like a fish in water. That way, combined with the chanting sound, I can improve faster. Where's the fire-attributed spiritual qi? Oh right, the Southern Ridge fire field. Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he thought of a place. The Southern Ridge fire field was in the southwest of the mystical sword sect. It was an area where volcanoes erupted. The volcanoes covered a radius of 1,000 miles, and it was filled with flames and fire-type spiritual qi. It was perfect for him to practice the fire gun controlling art there. The key was that that area not only had a large number of fire attribute demonic beasts, but it also produced a spiritual herb called flame crystal grass. Flame crystal grass was one of the precious materials required to cultivate the 3rd stage of the true war dragon technique. This was a material that was more precious than the spirit condensing fruit and the blood mist rock. If he were to exchange for it at the mystical sword sect, Lu Ming estimated that it would cost at least 10 to 20,000 contribution points. Going to the Southridge fire field was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Lu Ming immediately returned to the mystical sword sect to visit Pang Shi. After such a long time, Pang Shi had already recovered and was even more diligent in his cultivation. Seeing that Pang Shi was fine, Lu Ming was relieved. He then exchanged some detox pills and essential qi recovery pills with his contribution points and headed to the Southridge fire field. On the way, Lu Ming caught a 4th grade 2nd level gale lion. The speed of the wind travel lion was extremely fast, much faster than the green scale horse. 5 days later, Lu Ming arrived at the Lingnan fire field. They could already feel waves of hot air blowing against their faces before they even entered the Southern Ridge fire field. After releasing the wind-walking lion, Lu Ming walked into the Southridge fire field. There were no volcanoes in the periphery of the Lingnan fire field. The ground was pitch black like burnt rocks. Hot air was rising from the ground. Whoosh! Sometimes a gas would rush out of the ground. It was extremely hot, and ordinary people would be scalded if they touched it. Not long after Lu Ming entered, he would occasionally see some figures. These people had a name stone hunters. There were many volcanoes in the center of the Southern Ridge fire field. When these volcanoes erupted, they would spew out a type of or called inferno stone. Inferno stone could be refined into inferno iron, and it was the best material for forging spirit weapons. However, those who would come here to pick up stones were usually itinerant cultivators with low cultivation, and there were even ordinary people. The Lingnan fire field was full of danger. The ground would spew out hot gases, lava, and flames from time to time. Even a martial arts master would be severely injured, or even killed if he was hit by the flames. As for inferno ore, it was just an ore and wasn't expensive. Therefore, those with high cultivation rarely came here. Lu Ming did not stay long in the outer area. He wanted to go to the central region, where there were many fire-type demonic beasts and the fire-type spiritual qi was stronger. That was the place for cultivation. Very soon, Lu Ming passed through the outer area and arrived at the central area. In the central region, the air was even hotter, as if they were in a big steamer. The stones on the ground were all fiery red, and one could even hear a pop sound. Lu Ming looked around and could occasionally see lava gushing out of the ground. This area was even more dangerous and almost no one came here. Lu Ming circulated his essential qi throughout his body to resist the heat from the outside world. At the same time, he was fully focused on observing the situation on the ground. This was to prevent them from being hit by the lava. Oh! Chapter 87. Chapter 87. Disciple of the 10 Directions Sword School. 549690339. He then walked in. After walking for about 10 miles, Lu Ming stopped. This was because a fierce tiger with red flames all over its body had appeared in front of him. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger was a Class 8 second-level demonic beast. It was a fire element demonic beast, and usually lived in places with rich fire element spiritual qi. Roar! The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger suddenly roared and opened its mouth. A pillar of fire spewed out of its mouth and blasted toward Lu Ming. Good! Lu Ming's eyes gleamed and he took out his fire-patterned gun. Fire gun art broken armor. With a thrust of the spear, the spinning cutting force burst out and destroyed the pillar of fire spat out by the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger. Then Lu Ming charged at the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger and smashed his spear at it. Fire gun art mountain crash. The long spear pressed down, emitting a violent whistling sound. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger seemed to sense danger. The fiery red fur on its body stood on end, and on its fur, there were scorching flames. These flames condensed into a huge fireball in the air and shot towards the fire-patterned spear, trying to block the attack. However, it was all in vain. The fire-patterned spear was unstoppable. With a slight shake, the fireball collapsed, and the fire-patterned spear continued to smash down. Bang! The spear hit the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's head, making a cracking sound. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's forehead caved in. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's huge body rolled back dozens of meters before it stopped. It was no longer breathing. Lu Ming walked over and controlled his blood meridian to suck out the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's blood essence. Lu Ming would not miss the chance to obtain the blood essence of an 8th grade 2nd level demonic beast. In the mystical sword sect, it cost 800 contribution points. Circulating his spirit-devouring bloodline, it did not take long for him to devour and refine the Scarlet Flame Demon Tiger's blood essence. Lu Ming's cultivation had improved once again, but he was still a little lacking to break through to the 8th grade master realm. This place is rich in flame qi. I'll cultivate the fire lance technique here. Immediately, Lu Ming's mind sank into the fire gun control art, and he began to cultivate. Qi and NBSP buzz. Shadows of the spear were everywhere, and the energy was surging. Lu Ming felt that his cultivation was extremely smooth. There was no obstruction when he circulated the spear technique. It was as if he was one with the surrounding environment. As expected, the environment had a great influence on the cultivation of battle techniques. Smooth, it's too smooth. Lu Ming's eyes lit up and he was immersed in this feeling. Lu Ming only stopped after 6 hours of cultivation. An NBSP, hoo. Lu Ming panted heavily. Cultivating here required him to circulate his essential qi to protect his body at all times. He also had to observe his surroundings to see if there was any magma or flames rushing out. It was very taxing on his essential qi and mind. However, Lu Ming's eyes were filled with excitement. He had only cultivated for 6 hours and Lu Ming could feel that he had made great progress in the fire gun art. Lu Ming immediately retreated to the outer area to recover his essential qi. After his essential qi had recovered, Lu Ming entered the Supreme Shrine again. With the help of the chanting, he continued to comprehend the feeling of cultivating in the central region. Sure enough, with the chanting, the feeling of cultivation just now became clearer, and his understanding of the fire gun art was one step closer. A few hours later, Lu Ming entered the central region again to cultivate the firearms control art. Just like that, Lu Ming cultivated in the central area. When his essential qi was exhausted, he returned to the outer area to recover. Then, he combined it with the chanting of sutras to comprehend the fire gun art. Lu Ming's comprehension of the fire gun control art was rapidly improving. In just half a month, Lu Ming's fire gun controlling art had a breakthrough and entered the 2nd level, which was a small success. In addition, Lu Ming had killed no less than 10 fire attribute demonic beasts in the past half a month. 5 of them were at the 8th grade of 2nd level, and 1 was even at the 9th grade of 2nd level. The others were all below 8th grade 2nd level. After devouring and refining the demonic beast's blood essence, coupled with half a month's hard work, Lu Ming's cultivation finally broke through again, reaching the 8th grade master realm. Such a cultivation base was already considered extremely high among the bronze disciples of the mystical sword sect. An NBSP, hoo. Once again, Lu Ming exhausted his essential qi and retreated to the outer area. He meditated in a secluded pile of rocks to recover. When Lu Ming's essential qi had recovered by about half, he suddenly heard a commotion not far away. No, why did you catch me? I'm just an ordinary person without any cultivation. I can't help you. I'm only at 3rd grade warrior realm, so I can't help you. Please let me go. Sounds of begging for mercy could be heard. Shut up, what's with all the noise? If I say you can help, then you can help. It's your 8 lifetimes of good fortune to be able to help the disciples of my 10 Directions Sword School. A cold shout rang out. From the voice, it was a young man. Young heroes of the 10 Directions Sword School, if I can help you, I will definitely help. But you want us to enter the central region and even get close to the inner region. It's very dangerous there. With my cultivation, if I'm not careful, I will be burned to death. Please, young heroes, spare me. Some people begged for mercy. Pa! Immediately, the sound of a slap rang out. The young voice continued, What are you talking about? What did I call you for? What are you doing? If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll cut you into pieces. The other side of the phone calmed down. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out, and a figure appeared on the pile of rubble. It was a young man who was about 17 or 18 years old. He saw Lu Ming at a glance. Haha, senior brother. There's one more person here. The young man laughed and looked at Lu Ming. You really know how to hide, but do you think that hiding here is useful? Hurry up and come out and help us scout the way to the central region. Lu Ming frowned. He stopped the essential chi that he had recovered halfway and stood up. Kid, hurry up and come out. Don't dawdle, I don't have time to waste with you. As the young man spoke, he swiped his claw at Lu Ming's throat. It was obvious that he wanted to grab Lu Ming and throw him out like a chicken. However, he was disappointed. Not only was he disappointed, but he was also shocked. This was because Lu Ming had also extended a hand and clawed at him. He was faster and more accurate than him as he grabbed his wrist. The strong force penetrated the bones of the young man's wrist, and the heart-piercing pain made the young man scream. Arg! Little bastard, you dare to hurt me? You're courting death. The young man's other hand was about to slap Lu Ming. Get lost! Lu Ming shouted coldly and his essential chi burst out. He swung the arm that was holding the young man's wrist. The young man's arm made a kacha-kacha sound and the bones in one of his arms broke into several pieces. He let out a blood-curdling scream and flew more than 10 meters away, falling heavily on the ground. Arg! Ah! You little bastard, you're dead. You dare to hit me? Do you know who I am? The young man struggled to get up, hugging his arms and crying out in a heart-wrenching voice. Aren't you just a disciple of the 10-direction sword school? Is it that amazing? Lu Ming pursed his lips. Oh. Chapter 88. Chapter 88. Chapter 88 Spear Technique shows its might. 549690339. Since you know that I'm a disciple of the 10-direction sword school, why don't you kneel down and apologize? The young man shouted. What an idiot! Lu Ming was somewhat speechless. Could it be that everyone in the omnidirectional sword sect was like this? Since Lu Ming knew that he was a disciple of the omnidirectional sword sect and still dared to attack him, it was obvious that he was not afraid of the omnidirectional sword sect. He even asked Lu Ming to kneel down and apologize. If he was not an idiot, what was he? With a sway of his body, Lu Ming left the pile of rubble. At this moment, a few figures rushed over. They were all young people. Further away, there were 5 young men who surrounded more than a dozen secret practitioners and ordinary people who were picking up firestones. Junior brother Zhao, what's going on? One of the men who was running over asked. Senior brother, this little bastard, he actually dared to sneak attack me. If you move, you have to cripple him for me. The young man from before shouted. Brat, how dare you hurt a disciple of my 10-direction sword school? Now, I'll cripple your cultivation and then obediently help us scout the way inside. Perhaps we can still keep our lives. One of the chubby disciples from the 10-direction sword school said. He looked at Lu Ming coldly with an arrogant expression. Lu Ming touched his nose speechlessly. This was a disciple of the omnipresent sword sect? Why did they all have the same behavior and look like they were superior? The 10-direction sword school was indeed the #1 sect in the Burning Sun Empire, but there was no need for everyone to put on such a high and mighty expression, right? Kid, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? The chubby young man shouted coldly. You asked me to scout the way in and even captured so many ordinary people. What do you want? Lu Ming did not answer. Instead, he asked curiously. Nonsense, is this something you can ask? Obediently go and scout the way. The chubby young man said coldly. Then he threw a punch at Lu Ming's dantian. The chubby young man had the cultivation of a 7th-grade master realm. His punch was extremely powerful. If it landed, it would definitely destroy Lu Ming's cyclone and cripple his cultivation. This was the Shifeng sword sect, extremely domineering. If they didn't agree, they would destroy your cultivation. The 10-direction sword school, we'll have to fight them sooner or later, so I'll collect some interest first. Lu Ming's gaze turned cold. Lu Yuntian might have fallen into the hands of the 10-direction sword sect. Lu Ming did not have a good impression of the 10-direction sword sect. Now it was even worse. Boom! Lu Ming's flame dragon fist blasted out, and his fist force was faster and more ruthless. A punch accurately hit the fat young man's stomach. The fat young man's eyes instantly bulged out. Immediately, he let out a shrill scream. His fat body flew out like a ball, flying nearly 20 meters away before falling to the ground. He rolled a few times before stopping. You destroyed my cultivation? You actually destroyed my cultivation, bastard, bastard. The chubby young man let out a shrill scream. You're the only one allowed to cripple my cultivation, but I'm not allowed to cripple yours. Lu Ming said indifferently. Brat, you're looking for death. The remaining two young men roared and unsheathed their long swords. Two sharp sword lights burst out and attacked Lu Ming. The two of them were both 7th grade Master Realm. Fire Gun Art Moon pulling. With a move of his hand, the fire vein spear appeared. He swept the spear across. In the sky a fiery red light flashed like a moon. Bang! Bang! The two young men from the 10 Directions sword sect were unable to resist at all. They were sent flying by the long spear, and they vomited blood in the air. When they fell, they were no longer breathing. Lu Ming's shot had already broken their bones, and their internal organs were shattered. The chubby young man and the young man from before were stunned. Their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled. Lu Ming's gaze shifted to the young man with the broken hand. Don't kill me. The young man with the broken hand shouted in fear. However, Lu Ming was unmoved. He raised his long spear. Stop! At this moment, the 5 disciples of the 10 Directions sword school, who had surrounded the stone pickers, all rushed over. One of them let out a loud roar and revealed his powerful cultivation at the peak of the 8th grade Master Realm. Ah! The young man with the broken hand cried out in fear and ran for his life toward the 5 disciples of the 10 Directions sword school. However, whoosh! Lu Ming swung the long spear in his hand and it shot out like lightning. It caught up with the young man with the broken hand in an instant and pierced through his chest from the back, nailing him to the ground. Die! Die! Little bastard, not only will you die, but your family and friends will also die. The peak 8th grade Master Realm disciple let out an angry roar and rushed toward Lu Ming. Let's see who dies first. Using the dragon serpent steps, Lu Ming turned into a gust of wind and rushed towards the 5 men from the omnidirectional sword sect. When he passed by the one-armed young man, he pulled out his fire-patterned spear. Both parties were rapidly approaching. Wild wave slash! The 8th grade Master Realm disciple roared. He held a huge sword that was as wide as a palm with both hands, and the sword light was like a storm slashing toward Lu Ming. Buzz! The fire vein spear shook and swept forward. Clang! The spear and the sword clashed, sending sparks flying in all directions and creating a massive boom. The disciple from the omnipresent sword sect trembled and took a dozen steps back, while Lu Ming's body trembled and swayed slightly. Kill! The next moment, the other 4 disciples of the omnidirectional sword sect slashed their swords at Lu Ming. Out of the 5 major sects of the Blazing Sun Empire, only the 10 Direction Sword School and the Mystical Sword School specialized in sword techniques, and the sword techniques they specialized in were slightly different. The sword techniques cultivated by the 10 Direction Sword School leaned towards being firm and fierce. They were bold and powerful. The 4 disciples from the Omnipresent Sword School, 2 8th grade and 2 7th grade Master Realm, joined forces. Their sword chi was like a raging wave sweeping toward Lu Ming. As he attacked, he also used Bloodline Explosion, which was much more powerful. However, they were facing Lu Ming, who had already cultivated the black level low-level martial arts technique to the 2nd level. Lan Yu! Lu Ming's eyes were bright. The essential chi in his entire body burst out and he swept his spear. Boom! 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 There were 4 consecutive explosions and at the same time 4 screams. The 2 7th grade Master Realm disciples were instantly killed and sent flying far away. The 2 8th grade Master Realm young men weren't any better off. They were sent flying for more than 10 meters before crashing heavily onto the ground. They coughed up large mouthfuls of blood and were also severely injured. 1 spear strike had killed 2 and injured 2, shocking the peak 8th grade Master Realm disciple. However, Lu Ming would not give him any chance to catch his breath. He rushed forward a few steps and then jumped high up, smashing the fire-patterned gun down. Landslide! The long spear smashed down with a shrill whistling sound. The disciple from the 10 Directions Sword School turned pale. He exploded with all his strength and circulated the power of his bloodline to the extreme. His combat sword slashed upwards. Clang! The spear hit the combat sword, and the force whistled out, forming a gust of wind that swept in all directions. Boom! The stone under the disciple's feet exploded. He couldn't stand still and knelt down. The stone on his knee exploded. Oh! Chapter 89. Chapter 89. Chapter 89 Extinct Volcano. 549690339. He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood and fell to the ground like a pool of mud. The spear had shattered both his arms, and the powerful impact had also shattered his internal organs. He was dead for sure. The power of the black-grade low-level martial arts technique was finally on display. Lu Ming had only cultivated it to the second level, but its power was double that of the yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique's sixth level. What? How could he be so strong? Who are they? The disciple from the 10 Directions Sword School asked unwillingly as he coughed up blood. His eyes were filled with disbelief. With his cultivation at the peak of the 8th grade master realm, he was actually defeated in one move. The cultivation that Lu Ming revealed was clearly only at the 8th grade master realm. Lu Ming of the Mystical Sword Sect. Lu Ming said indifferently. The Mystical Sword Sect. The young man murmured. His eyes then became unfocused and his vitality completely disappeared. At the same time, the other 2 8th grade Master Realm experts had also died. Their internal organs were also crushed by Lu Ming. Although the spear technique was not as varied as the sword technique, it was more violent, more direct, and more overbearing. The chubby young man was the only one left. At this moment, the chubby young man's face was deathly pale. His body was constantly trembling, and cold sweat was flowing down his face. Lu Ming walked towards the fat young man step by step. Don't kill me!" The chubby young man shouted in shock. "Tell me, what does the 10 Direction Sword Sect want by capturing so many ordinary stone hunters?" Lu Ming asked coldly. "I can say it, but you have to promise not to kill me." The chubby young man rolled his eyes and shouted. "Oh, you don't want to say it? Then you can go to hell." Lu Ming's eyes turned cold and he raised the long spear in his hand. The chubby young man was so scared that his soul almost scattered. He shouted, "I'll talk, I'll talk, I'll talk." Lu Ming looked at him coldly, waiting for him to continue. "We came with Senior Brother Zheng. He said he would bring us here to search for treasures, so we came." Senior Brother Zheng said that he had read about an extinct volcano near the inner area of the Southridge fire field in the ancient books recorded by his ancestors. There are treasures inside. The chubby young man hurriedly explained. "Then why did you catch so many ordinary stone hunters?" Lu Ming asked. "Because the area around the extinct volcano is very unstable. Lava and flames will burst out from time to time. The ground will even sink in. We need someone to find a safe way to enter the extinct volcano." The chubby young man was scared to death and spoke in full detail. Lu Ming frowned. It was obvious that they wanted to use the stone hunters' lives to find a way for them. This was what martial arts powerhouses were like. In their eyes, the lives of ordinary people were like ants. Lu Ming would never show mercy to his enemies. However, he could not disregard the lives of others for his own selfish reasons. "What treasures are there in that extinct volcano?" Lu Ming pondered for a moment and asked. "I don't know about that. Senior Brother Zheng didn't tell us. I've told you everything I know. Can you let me go now?" The chubby young man begged, but he was thinking about how to ask Senior Brother Zheng to kill Lu Ming after he escaped. "Wait a minute, I have another question. What's your Senior Brother Zheng's cultivation? Is there anyone who is stronger than him?" Lu Ming asked again. The chubby young man answered honestly. "Senior Brother Zheng is a famous genius of our 10 Directions Sword School. He has already won 8 consecutive victories on the bronze platform. He's not much weaker than the geniuses on the bronze ranking. Among the senior and junior brothers who came this time, Senior Brother Zheng is the strongest. 8 consecutive wins on the bronze list." Lu Ming muttered. The division of ranks among the disciples of the 5 major sects of the Blazing Sun Empire was similar. They were all divided into 3 ranks: bronze, silver, and gold. Similarly, there were bronze and Esilavira lists in every sect. The rules were exactly the same. Alright, I've said what you wanted me to say. Can you let me go now? The chubby young man said. Let you go? When did I say I would let you go? Lu Ming said coldly. Then, he thrust the long spear and pierced the fat young man's heart. 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform? I wonder how powerful the 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform of the 10 Direction Sword sect are? Lu Ming's eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Back then, he had vomited blood from He Tai's punch. He Tai had won 8 consecutive victories on the bronze platform of the mystical sword sect. They both had 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform, but they belonged to 2 different sections. Their abilities might not be the same, but the difference would not be too great. Lu Ming's combat strength had improved greatly during this period of time. It was a good time to test the results. Following that, Lu Ming devoured all the blood essence of the omnidirectional sword sect disciples and found a place to refine them. As for the stone hunters, they had already fled like a swarm of bees when the Shifang sword sect disciples were killed. 2 hours later, Lu Ming's essential qi had fully recovered and he had reached his peak. Then, Lu Ming ran in the direction of the extinct volcano that the chubby young man had mentioned. In the southern ridge-fire field, in the depths of the central area, near the inner area, there was a tall, dead volcano. It was unknown when this volcano had stopped erupting, but the temperature around it was still astonishingly high. The ground was red. A few thousand meters away from the extinct volcano, there were more than 20 young men. Needless to say, they were all disciples of the 10 Direction Sword School. More than 20 disciples of the 10 Direction Sword School surrounded more than 30 stone hunters. More than 30 stone hunters gathered together, their faces terrified and trembling. Young heroes of the 10 Direction Sword School, I beg you. It's really dangerous there. If you let us explore the way, we'll be sending our slavirs to our deaths. I have old and young people to take care of. I beg you, please let me go back. A burly man in his 50s kept bowing and begging. Whoosh! With a flash of sword light, the burly man's head flew high into the air. So noisy. You want to leave? I'll send you on your way now. A disciple from the 10 Direction Sword School sheathed his sword and said coldly. The other stone hunters suddenly kept quiet out of fear, and did not dare to speak again. However, the look of despair on their faces became even more intense. You hurry up and scout the way. If you're lucky enough to walk past, you can still keep your dog life. A disciple from the 10 Direction Sword sect pointed at a dark-skinned man. The burly man's eyes were filled with despair, and his body trembled. If you don't want to go, then die now. The disciple from the 10 Direction Sword School said coldly. I'll go. The burly man said in a trembling voice. Then he walked out while trembling. If they went out to explore, they might still have a way out. If they didn't go, they would die. This burly man must have cultivated martial arts, but he had not awakened his bloodline. He was only at the first-grade warrior realm. He walked forward carefully and soon he had walked more than 200 meters. Suddenly, a stream of lava rushed out from the ground and directly submerged the burly man. Arg! The burly man screamed and turned into a ball of fire. In a few breaths, he was turned into a pile of charcoal. The temperature of the lava was terrifyingly high. Oh! Chapter 90. Chapter 90. The weak are like ants. 549690339. A living person was instantly turned into charcoal. This scene was truly terrifying. When the other stone hunters saw this, they were so scared that they couldn't stop trembling. However, the disciples of the 10 Direction Sword School were very calm, even cold. Mark the places you just passed. Among the 10 Direction Sword sect disciples, a dark-skinned young man with a cold expression ordered. This cold-looking young man was the Shifang sword sect's senior brother Zheng Zhangku. He didn't even look at the stone hunters. In his eyes, these stone hunters were just ants, tools to be used. His eyes were fixed on the extinct volcano in front of him. According to the records left by our ancestors, this is the place. I must get the fire spirit milk. As long as I get the fire spirit milk, my physical body will definitely be able to cultivate to the second grade. In that case, my strength will increase greatly, and I will definitely be able to win 10 consecutive battles on the bronze platform and enter the bronze list. It's not just breaking through to the second grade, it's even going to reach a higher level. 300 years ago, our ancestor got the fire spirit milk here. Now that 300 years have passed, there must be a lot of fire spirit milk. If there is enough, it's not entirely impossible to break through to the third grade. Haha, in that case, how much can my combat strength improve? Zheng Qian thought fanatically. Yes, senior brother Zheng. Yes, the Shifeng sword sect disciple replied. Then, he threw out balls of white powder and scattered them on the spot where the burly man had just passed, forming a safe path. Now you go and scout the path. The disciple from the 10 Directions Sword School pointed at a young man in his 20s. The young man's face instantly turned pale. His face was filled with despair and cold sweat. He cried out, I beg you, please let me go. I beg you. Ahai, young heroes, I beg you to let Ahai go. Let me take his place. He's still young. A white-haired old man walked out and knelt on the ground, kowtowing non-stop. Grandpa, don't. You can't go. The young man shouted. Let me do it, let me do it. I beg you to let Ahai go. He's still young. The old man didn't seem to hear the young man's words and continued to kowtow. Oh, what a loving grandfather-grandson pair. All right, this young master will be lenient. Old man, you go scout the way. A flat-nosed disciple from the 10 Directions Sword sect waved his hand and said, Grandpa, Grandpa, don't go. The young man's tears flowed down as he shouted, Ahai, I'm already old. It doesn't matter anymore, but you must live on. The old man warned the young man, and then walked forward without looking back. The young man looked on in despair. The burly man from before had passed through the first 200 meters. It was very safe, and the old man had passed through smoothly. At this point, the old man carefully avoided the place where the lava had spurted out and continued forward. However, before he had even walked 100 meters, the ground suddenly split open when the old man stomped his foot. The old man fell straight down. Then there was a shrill scream, and after a few breaths there was no sound. Grandpa! The young man let out a desperate roar. The other stone hunters were even more flustered, their faces pale. Make a mark. Zheng continued to order. Buzz! Buzz! Balls of white powder were thrown out, marking the safe routes and the dangerous places. It's your turn, go up. The flat-nosed disciple pointed at the young man from before. The young man's expression changed drastically. Just now, he cried out. My grandfather has already taken my place. Why are you still asking me to go? Replace you? I never said that he was going in your place. He was the one who requested to go first, so of course I have to satisfy him. Now it's your turn. The flat-nosed disciple from the 10 Directions Sword sect said coldly with a playful expression on his face. The other disciples of the 10 Directions Sword sect looked on indifferently. No, you can't do this, I won't go. The young man kept shaking his head and shouting. The other stone hunters kept quiet out of fear. They did not dare to say a word for fear of being noticed by the disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School. You're not. The flat-nosed disciple's face turned cold, and he grinned hideously. You don't want to go, right? If you don't want to go, I'll send you on your way now to accompany your dead grandpa. He waved his sword and a cold killing intent enveloped the young man's body. The young man's eyes were filled with fear. In the end, he still trembled and moved forward. After the young man walked a few dozen meters forward, he suddenly started to escape to the side. You want to escape? You're looking for death. The flat-nosed disciple shouted and exhaled. He held his sword with both hands and slashed down at the young man who had escaped. Whoosh! A beam of sword chi shot out and instantly crossed dozens of meters, cutting the young man in half. I've said it before. If you obediently go and explore the path, you might still have a chance to live. If you want to escape, the only path is death. The flat-nosed disciple of the 10 Directions Sword sect sneered. He then pointed and said, You go scout the path. Those who were pointed at walked out in despair, trembling as they moved forward, hoping that they were lucky enough to reach the end. But the result was still death. Just like that, one by one they picked up the stones and went forward to explore the way. One by one they died in the fire and lava. However, the safe route was slowly being discovered. The closer one got to the extinct volcano, the more dangerous it was, and the more unstable the underground was. More than a dozen of the 30 stone hunters had died in the blink of an eye. At this moment, they were still about 100 meters away from the extinct volcano. He called a few more people to investigate, and finally a complete and safe path appeared. "Young heroes, can we go now?" one of the remaining stone hunters asked in a low voice. "Leave? Where to? The information here cannot be leaked out." Zheng, who hadn't spoken the entire time, spoke. What? What's the meaning of this?" The stone hunter's face changed. "What do you mean? All of you will die." The flat-nosed disciple of the 10 Directions Sword sect laughed sinisterly. No, you said that as long as you found a safe path you would let us go. You can't do this. You are disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School. You can't go back on your word. I'm begging you. No, I don't want to die. I curse you to die a horrible death. More than 10 stone hunters had already had hope, but at this time, their faces were filled with despair and they started to shout crazily. Curse us? You all know that we are disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School. Who would dare to kill us? The flat-nosed disciple of the 10 Directions Sword sect sneered. There's a person there walking towards us. Suddenly, a disciple of the 10 Directions Sword School shouted. The rest of the people couldn't help but look over. From the right, a young figure was walking towards them. The figure was about 15 or 16 years old. He had a slender figure and a delicate face. However, his eyes were extremely cold, so cold that it was terrifying. This young man was Lu Ming. Oh. Chapter 91. Chapter 91. Chapter 91 Destruction. 549690339. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the entire scene. He could roughly guess what had happened when he saw the charred bodies. In his heart, a cold and sharp killing intent burst out. Although warriors had great power, they had their own rules and pride. Ordinary warriors would not kill ordinary people. However, these disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School had already lost their bottom line. In order to achieve their goals, they would do anything. Lu Ming's killing intent had never been so strong. Sensing the killing intent from Lu Ming, the eyes of the disciples from the omnidirectional sword sect narrowed. Zheng frowned. He remembered that he had sent 9 people in that direction, but not only had no one come, but an unfamiliar teenager had also come. Something was wrong. Zheng's expression changed. Lu Ming took one step at a time. Seemed slow, but he was actually very fast. In a few breaths, he was in front of the disciple from the omnipresent sword sect. Kid, how did you get here? And where are the disciples of my 10 Directions Sword School? Did you see it? A disciple of the 10 Directions Sword School asked loudly. I did, but they're all dead. Lu Ming responded indifferently. The 20 or so disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School all had a change in expression. Someone shouted, Tell me, how did you die? Lu Ming smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, the fire-patterned spear appeared. A powerful aura burst out. Of course I killed them. Now I'll send you down to accompany them. You killed him? Brat, you're quite bold. Little bastard, how dare you kill the disciples of my 10 Directions Sword School? You're dead. Not only you but your family will also be dead. Tell me, what method did you use to sneak attack? You still want to kill us? You're overestimating yourself. I'll kill you. Lu Ming's words caused a commotion. A burly young man strode out with a huge sword in his hand and slashed at Lu Ming's head. If this sword hit, it would definitely split Lu Ming into 2. Buzz! A bolt of lightning flashed and the burly young man's body suddenly stiffened. With a clang, his sword fell to the ground. Then he clenched his throat with both hands. His eyes were wide open like a dead fish, revealing a look of disbelief. There was a bloody hole in his throat, and blood was flowing out. Lightning pursuit of the fire gun art was the fastest move in the fire gun art. The surrounding disciples of the omnidirectional sword sect did not even see how Lu Ming had attacked. Those who kill will always be killed. If you want to kill me, then be prepared to be killed. Lu Ming's indifferent voice was heard. The burly young man fell to the ground and struggled a few times before he stopped breathing. Good kill! More than 10 stone hunters shouted in their hearts. Although they did not dare to shout it out, they were very happy in their hearts. Zheng's eyes narrowed. What a fast speed! Everyone, let's attack together and kill him. Kill! Go to hell! At once, more than a dozen disciples from the omnidirectional sword school roared and leaped high into the air, slashing out sharp sword chi at Lu Ming from the front. The weakest of the disciples was at the 6th grade master realm, while the strongest was at the 8th grade master realm. The combined power of the dozen of them was extremely terrifying. Even a 9th grade master realm expert would be chopped to death by the swords. However, Lu Ming did not move at all. He did not even blink. Fire gun art fire dance. All of a sudden, Lu Ming held the end of the spear in his hand. The long spear swayed and pierced forward. An NBSP, hoo-hoo. The sound of the long spear vibrating could be heard. Then fiery red flames suddenly appeared in the sky. These flames were scarlet red, poignant and beautiful. They were like flowers of flames, and they also seemed to be dancing. When the flower of flames bloomed, the scene suddenly rang out with a series of miserable screams. The 10 or so disciples of the 10 Direction Sword Sect retreated in unison. Fresh blood scattered in the air, and it was extremely tragic. There was a bloody hole in each of the 10 or so disciples of the 10 Direction Sword School, either in their throats or hearts. In one move, 13 disciples of the 10 Direction Sword School were killed. However, Lu Ming did not stop at all. He strode forward and swept his long spear horizontally. Lan Yu! Bang bang! A series of bone-cracking sounds were heard, and the 8 young men from the 10 Direction Sword School were sent flying far away. He fell to the ground and stopped breathing. It was a complete sweep. This was Lu Ming's current combat strength. With his black-grade low-level martial skill cultivated to the 2nd stage and his cultivation breaking through to the early 8th grade master realm, his battle prowess had increased to a terrifying level. There were only 3 disciples from the 10 Direction Sword School left. One was Zheng and the other was a 9th grade master realm expert. The other one was the flat-nosed young man. As he was standing close to the stone hunters, Lu Ming's attack did not affect him. At this moment, the flat-nosed young man's expression changed drastically, and his legs and stomach trembled. Zheng's expression also became extremely grave. Your combat power is very strong, but you've killed so many of our 10 Direction Sword School's disciples. From now on, no one will be able to save you, no matter whether you're in heaven or in hell. Zheng's voice was cold. As long as I kill all of you, who will know that I did it? Lu Ming smiled indifferently. Ha ha, you want to kill me? I admit that you're very strong, and I'm not sure if I can kill you. But you want to kill me? I'll let you know how laughable your words are. Zhang Qian pointed his sword at Lu Ming, and a powerful red sword aura flickered. Brother Zhao, let's kill him together. Die! Zheng Jiao suddenly shouted. He leaped up and slashed his sword at Lu Ming. The combat sword cut through the air, producing an ear-piercing sonic boom. At the same time on the other side, the 9th grade Master Realm disciple from the Omnipresent Sword School also burst out and slashed at Lu Ming. Buzz! Lu Ming lifted it upwards. Clang! Clang! The spear and the 2 swords clashed, causing a violent vibration. Lu Ming's figure swayed slightly and he took 3 steps back. Zheng was also thrown back a few meters, landing on the ground. As for the 9th grade Master Realm young man, he was thrown back a dozen meters and spat out a mouthful of blood. This Zheng Jia is so powerful. Lu Ming's gaze flickered. Although they had only exchanged one move, Lu Ming could sense that the power that Zhang Qian's combat sword was spreading out was extremely powerful. It was like a raging wave that was continuous. The other 9th grade Master Realm young man was trash compared to him. He was definitely not weaker than He Tai. The reason why Lu Ming retreated was basically because of Zheng Zheng. At this moment Zheng was also extremely shocked. Lu Ming's strength had also exceeded his expectations. He was not weaker than him. In fact, he was even stronger. Kill. There was nothing much to say. The two sides were already mortal enemies, and it would only end when one side fell. The two sides fought again. The two of them erupted with their bloodlines. This time Zheng was the main attacker, while the other 9th grade Master Realm youth sneaked an attack from the side. For a moment Lu Ming was somewhat passive. As for the flat-nosed youngster, he couldn't do anything at all. He could only watch anxiously from the side. Oh. Chapter 92. Chapter 92, Killing Zheng. 549690339. Cross-shaped killing sword. Zheng Jiao wielded a huge sword that was wider than his palm. His attack was extremely overbearing. As he slashed out, the sword radiance formed a cross and slashed down at Lu Ming. Its power was immense. Broken armor. Lu Ming's long spear trembled. The tip of the spear formed a spinning cutting force that collided with Zheng Jiao's sword gleam. Clang! There was a loud explosion. Lu Ming took 2 steps back while Zheng Jiao took 3 steps back. In a head-on confrontation, Lu Ming had the upper hand. This Zheng, how can his attack be so strong? The martial skill he used is clearly not a black-grade martial skill, but a yellow-grade upper-level martial skill. Although it has already been cultivated to an extremely high level, its attack power can't possibly be this strong? There was a flash of suspicion in Lu Ming's eyes. Although Zheng's cultivation had already reached the peak of the 9th grade Master Realm, and he had even activated a 5th-level Blood Meridian, without a black-level martial arts technique, it was impossible for his attack power to be so strong. He was actually only at a slight disadvantage when he fought Lu Ming head-on. Lu Ming's essential qi was 3 times more condensed than ordinary essential qi. In addition, he had already cultivated the flaming gun technique to the 2nd level. Lu Ming could defeat an ordinary 9th grade peak Master Realm martial artist in one move. Oh right, it's the body. This Zheng Jiao's body is extremely strong. He should have cultivated the path of body refinement. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He discovered that Zheng Gan's muscles were bulging, and his skin was covered with a faint red glow. It must be his physical body. Zheng had cultivated a body tempering technique. When his physical body was combined with essential qi, he could erupt with astonishing combat power. That was why he could fight against Lu Ming. Buzz! At this moment, a sword light was rapidly piercing toward Lu Ming. How troublesome! Lu Ming frowned. He swung his long spear and it collided with a thin sword. A figure retreated far away. It was the 9th grade Master Realm disciple from the 10 Direction Sword School. Although the disciple's attack power was not strong, his body movement was not weak. He was slippery and sneaky. He took advantage of Lu Ming's flaws to launch a sneak attack. If I use my bloodline power, I can defeat them easily. However, I can't always rely on my bloodline power. It can only be used as a trump card and can't be used in regular battles. I'll just rely on my current state to finish them off. Bang! Lu Ming took a step forward and charged toward Zheng Jian. Landslide. The long spear came down from above and smashed down heavily. Zheng's eyes focused and he used his sword to block. Boom! The rock under Zheng's feet shattered, and he retreated. He's only at the early stage of the 8th grade Master Realm. Even though he's cultivated a black grade martial skill, how can he be so powerful? My physical body has already been cultivated to complete grade 1, but I'm still no match for him. Zheng Qian's shock could not be any greater. It was normal to suppress him if they were of the same level. However, Lu Ming's cultivation was only at the early stage of the 8th grade Master Realm. How did he do it? Kill. Lu Ming's fighting spirit was like a rainbow. He continuously attacked Zheng, using Zheng to practice his spear technique. The surging dragon-shaped vital energy was continuously infused into the long spear. It was extremely smooth. One spear after another, Lu Ming was like an invincible general who was galloping on the battlefield. Zheng was completely suppressed. Buzz! At this moment, a sword light suddenly stabbed toward Lu Ming's back. I'm just waiting for you to make your move. Oh. A cold glint flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. He swept his long spear across without turning his head. Lan Yu. A ray of red moonlight flashed, and the 9th grade Master Realm disciple was shocked. He used his movement technique to retreat. But it was too late. The spear was 8 feet long, and with the arm ruler the 3-meter distance was completely covered. Block it! The 9th grade Master Realm Shifang Sword School disciple turned pale with fright, and used his long sword to block in front of him. However, his long sword was thin, so it couldn't be blocked at the root. Clang! Lu Ming's long spear struck his long sword. A violent force exploded and the long sword bent. The body of the sword and the body of the spear struck his chest heavily. Bang! The Shifang Sword School disciple's body was sent flying like a sandbag. His body was stuck to the ground and slid for dozens of meters, creating a deep ditch on the hard ground. By the time he stopped, he was no longer breathing. A 9th grade Master Realm expert was killed by Lu Ming's spear. After sending the 9th grade Master Realm disciple flying, Lu Ming's long spear did not stop. It continued to move forward and clashed with Zhang Jiao's attack. Now there's no one to disturb me. I can finish you off. Lu Ming's calm voice was heard. He took a step forward and his long spear struck out like lightning. Zhang did his best to block. In the blink of an eye, the two exchanged more than 10 moves. The more Lu Ming fought, the more courageous he became. His understanding of the fire gun art became deeper and his power became greater. Zhang was completely outmatched and was forced to retreat. Not far away, the flat-nosed young man's face turned pale. He suddenly shouted, "Senior brother Zhang, hold on for now. I'll return to the sect first and report to the elders to avenge you." Then he ran away. Damn it! Zhang roared. He does deserve to die. Don't worry, after I'm done with you, I'll kill him for you. Lu Ming said indifferently. Boom! The spear struck Zhang's sword, causing him to retreat, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The repeated battles had caused his muscles to tremble non-stop. The web between his thumb and forefinger had split open, and blood was seeping out. If it was not for his strong physical body that allowed him to unleash his essential qi without thinking of the consequences, he would have been killed by Lu Ming. Even so, he was severely injured. True qi. His true qi is too powerful. It's unstoppable. Zhang's eyes were filled with fear. Wait a minute. As long as you let me go, I can forget about the fact that you killed so many of my 10 Direction Sword School's disciples. I won't pursue this matter. Otherwise, you won't be able to withstand the anger of the 10 Direction Sword School. Zhang Qian shouted timidly. You're still threatening me at a time like this? What an idiot! Lu Ming said indifferently. The long spear did not stop and it was aimed at Zhang Jiao. Boom! Tung tung tung. Zhang Qian retreated 7 or 8 steps, coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. His injuries had worsened. Stop, stop, treasure. There are treasures in that extinct volcano. As long as you spare me, I can give you half, yes, half. Zhang shouted. No need. As long as I kill you, everything will be mine. I'm not going to play with you anymore. That junior brother of yours has already run far away. If you continue playing, he might really get away. Lu Ming's lips twitched and his body suddenly flashed red. Bloodline explosion. He had tested enough, so there was no need to keep it. Whoosh! The spear turned into a bolt of lightning, much faster than before. Zhang couldn't block it at all. No! Zhang shouted. The long spear pierced through his heart. Zhang's hands tightly gripped the spear. His eyes filled with unwillingness. Blood continuously flowed out of his mouth as he hoarsely shouted. Who the hell are you? Lu Ming pulled out his long spear and stomped on the ground. He chased after the flat-nosed young man like a bolt of lightning. Then, his voice came from afar. Lu Ming of the mystical sword sect. Lu Ming's figure had already disappeared. The mystical sword sect. Zhang muttered, the life in his eyes quickly dissipating. Oh. Chapter 93. Chapter 93. Chapter 93 Counting the Harvest. 549690339. Lu Ming's body was like the wind, extremely fast. He used the dragon serpent steps to its maximum. Although it was only a yellow rank lower level movement technique, Lu Ming's speed was still extremely fast under the explosion of his powerful essential qi. In just a few minutes, he saw the flat-nosed young man's figure. Hearing the sound of the wind, the flat-nosed young man turned around and was almost scared out of his wits. How could he be so fast? Could Zheng have been killed? He had originally thought that Zheng could at least block another 100 moves. Arg! Ah! Don't come over! The flat-nosed youngster ran frantically, shouting wildly. However, the distance between him and Lu Ming continued to close. The flat-nosed youngster simply couldn't escape. Plop! At this time the flat-nosed young man suddenly stopped, turned around and knelt down with a plop. His actions were done in one go. Please, please, please don't kill me. As long as you let me go, I won't say a word about what happened today. The flat-nosed young man kept kowtowing and shouting. Why should I believe you? Lu Ming said with a cold smile. I swear I will never tell anyone. If I tell anyone, I will die a horrible death. The flat-nosed young man pointed to the sky and swore. Sure, I can give you a chance. Lu Ming suddenly smiled coldly and kicked him. Bang! This kick landed directly on the flat-nosed young man's dantian, scattering his qi current. Arg! Didn't you say that you would give me a chance after you destroyed my cultivation? The flat-nosed young man let out a heart-wrenching scream. Don't worry, I'll give you a chance. Lu Ming grabbed the flat-nosed young man's neck and walked toward the extinct volcano as if he was carrying a little chick. Soon they arrived at the place where the battle had taken place. At that moment the stone hunters had all escaped. What are you trying to do? The flat-nosed young man asked in a trembling voice. It's very simple. Walk forward and explore the path. However, you're not allowed to take the path that has already been explored. Walk on the other side. Lu Ming pointed in the direction of the extinct volcano and said indifferently. In an instant the flat-nosed young man's face turned pale. His voice trembled as he said, Haven't we already found the path to the extinct volcano? Why do you still want me to scout the way? No, I'm not going. Don't you like to ask others to help you find the way? Now I want you to try it yourself. It's fine if you don't want to go, but I'll send you to reunite with your senior and junior brothers now. Lu Ming waved his long spear. The spear glowed and a cold killing intent enveloped the flat-nosed young man. No, you can't do this to me. There are dangers everywhere. I'll die if I go. I'm begging you, let me go. The flat-nosed young man was covered in cold sweat and his body was trembling non-stop. Especially when he thought of how the stone hunters had been burned to death, he shuddered. Before, when he had watched others go to explore the way, he had gloated and acted arrogantly, as if he was watching ants struggling on their deathbeds. He had no pity at all. But now when it was his turn he was more afraid than anyone. This is your only chance. My patience is limited. I'll count to 3. If you don't go after 3, then you don't have to go. Lu Ming's voice was extremely cold. To deal with such a person, what could be more satisfying than giving him a taste of his own medicine? 1. 2. I'll go. When Lu Ming was about to say 3, the flat-nosed young man finally could not take the pressure and shouted. Then his body trembled and he walked forward step by step. The further he walked, the more his body trembled. When he had walked more than 100 meters, a foul smell came out, and he was so scared that he peed himself. Buzz! Suddenly a gas burst out from under his feet. The flat-nosed young man was so frightened that his soul flew out of his body. He screamed and fell straight down. Lu Ming frowned. He walked up to take a look and was instantly speechless. The flat-nosed young man's face was ashen. He was not breathing at all. He was actually scared to death by a stream of hot air. Lu Ming shook his head and walked back to collect his spoils. These were the disciples of the omnipresent sword school. They must have many valuable things on them. Lu Ming would not miss this opportunity. As he searched for the spoils of war, he devoured their blood essence one by one. After the search, Lu Ming left the place and returned to the outer area. He then entered the Supreme Shrine and began to refine the blood essence. Now that Lu Ming's cultivation had reached the 8th grade master realm, the blood essence of martial artists below the 8th grade master realm was of little use to him. Only those above the 8th grade master realm would be of some help. After refining all the blood essence of the omnidirectional sword school disciple, Lu Ming's cultivation had improved to a certain extent. However, it was not by much. He was still a distance away from the middle 8th grade master realm. After refining the blood essence, Lu Ming began to check his spoils of war. With a wave of his hand, 2 storage rings appeared. It was a pleasant surprise that 2 of the disciples from the 10 Directions Sword School had storage rings. One was from Zhengzha, and the other was from the 9th grade Master Realm youth. Then with a thought, a pile of items appeared in the Supreme Shrine. Lu Ming started to count the Esilavira notes. Why is there only so little? After counting, Lu Ming frowned slightly. The Esilavira notes of the 20 or so disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School only added up to 4 million taels. More than 4 million taels of Esilavira seemed like a lot, but it depended on where he had gotten it. The 10 or so disciples of the Shifeng Sword School were at least at the 6th grade Master Realm. On average, each of them only had less than 200,000 taels of Esilavira. This was considered very little. On second thought, Lu Ming felt at ease. It was very normal. Just like him, the extra Esilavira was exchanged for contribution points, which were then used to exchange for resources that were useful to him to improve his strength. Most of the disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School were the same. They kept some Esilavira on them and exchanged the rest. After keeping the Esilavira notes, Lu Ming looked at the other items. There were some scattered pills that were not worth much money. Lu Ming put them aside. In the end, his gaze fell on a few books. Wild Wave Slash, a yellow-grade low-level sword technique. A yellow-grade high-level movement technique. Hunyuan technique, a yellow-grade upper-level cultivation skill. Lu Ming was overjoyed to learn 3 cultivation methods and martial arts techniques in a row. Generally speaking, sect disciples like them would rarely have cultivation methods and martial skill secret books on them, because most cultivation methods and martial skill secret books were rented from the sect's library hall to cultivate. There was a time limit, and when the time was up, they would have to return it. Of course, there were also exceptions. Some people had a fortuitous encounter and obtained some cultivation methods and martial skills secret books. These cultivation methods and secret books were for their own private use. For example, these books were mostly privately owned by the disciples of the 10 Directions Sword sect. He had obtained the Cloud Treading Steps from the 9th grade Master Realm youth. If he were to sell these 3 cultivation methods and martial skill manuals, they would be worth at least 5 to 6 million Esilavira. He had really profited. However, when Lu Ming's gaze landed on the 4th book, he was greatly shocked. Flaming Vajra Arts, a body tempering technique. Oh. Chapter 94. Chapter 94. 9th grade physical body. 549690339. This was actually a body tempering cultivation technique. It seemed that Zheng was cultivating this flaming Vajra arts. Body tempering cultivation techniques were extremely rare in the Divine Wilderness continent. Furthermore, body tempering cultivation techniques were known for being difficult and slow to cultivate. By cultivating a body tempering technique, one's body would constantly become stronger and possess all sorts of unbelievable abilities. According to the strength of the body was divided into 9 grades. Rank 1 was the weakest and rank 9 was the strongest. There were 3 levels: lower tier, upper tier, and peak tier. However, the path of body refinement wasn't a single path. It was a type of martial Tao, a supplementary type. Just like the path of inscription, it supplemented the martial Tao. This was because if one's physical body wasn't combined with martial arts, one wouldn't be able to unleash the power it should have. For example, the 1st grade physical body was not corresponding to the martial warrior realm. Without genuine qi and all kinds of martial arts techniques, the body alone was just an empty force. A grade 1 body was no match for a warrior realm martial artist. Even if he had a 2nd grade body, he was no match for a martial warrior. However, this did not mean that one's body was weak and cultivation was useless. Body refinement was an auxiliary to martial arts. Once a strong body, genuine qi, and various martial arts techniques were combined, an unimaginable power would burst out. It wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2, but it was an exponential increase. For example, the stronger one's physical body was, the more true energy one could unleash without any restraint, without having to worry about harming one's body. Some powerful martial skills and even secret skills were very harmful to the body. Without a strong body, one could not withstand them. Furthermore, the stronger one's physical body was, the more incredible one's abilities would be. The stronger one's physical body was, the stronger one's vitality and recovery rate would be. Even if one was injured, one would be able to recover very quickly. It was said that when one's physical body was strong enough, one could control the muscles, bones, and bones of the entire body. They could control every single strand of muscle, and they could instantly seal the wound when they were injured. He could also control his muscles and bones to change his shape and appearance. It was extremely wonderful. If he was stronger, he could even regrow a severed limb or even regrow a drop of blood. Of course, these were just legends. Therefore, the path of body refinement existed to support the path of martial arts. When combined with martial arts, it could produce a powerful force. Zheng Zhao was a good example. He did not cultivate black-level martial arts techniques, but his physical body was much stronger than Lu Ming's. With a yellow-level upper-level martial arts technique, he could burst out with strength that could compete with Lu Ming. This was especially true for some close combat martial artists who cultivated palm, fist, and claw techniques. If they combined it with a strong body, their strength would increase to a terrifying level. Lu Ming hurriedly opened the Flaming Vajra art and read it. After watching it, Lu Ming fell into deep thought. The Blaze Titan art can at most allow one to cultivate a third-grade body. From the looks of it, Zheng should have only cultivated to the Great Circle of first grade, not second grade. That's enough. If I can cultivate a third-grade body, my strength will increase by at least a few times. Lu Ming's eyes gradually lit up. This wasn't just for show. As a martial artist's cultivation level increased, their true qi would also slowly temper their physical body, making it stronger. However, the process was too slow. It was said that once one reached the martial arts grandmaster realm, one's physical body would naturally improve to the first grade. However, that was not enough to satisfy the needs of a martial artist. The stronger one's cultivation was, the stronger and more condensed one's genuine qi would be. The pressure on one's meridians and physical body would also be stronger. Therefore, when a martial artist fought, he would subconsciously retain a part of his genuine qi to protect his meridians and physical body. Usually, one could unleash 100% of one's strength, but in the true sense, one couldn't even unleash 100% of one's strength. It was already good enough to unleash 80%. However, only after his body became strong could he not have any worries and be able to unleash all his true qi. This was especially true for Lu Ming. His essential qi was too strong and condensed. Hence, he subconsciously left more essential qi to protect his meridians and physical body. Therefore, to Lu Ming, this Flaming Vajra art was more important than the black-level martial arts technique. Lu Ming put down the book after carefully studying the cultivation method of the Flaming Vajra art. He looked at the fifth and last book. This book was not a cultivation technique or a battle technique, but a notebook. It was found in Zheng's storage ring. After flipping through it, the first few pages were of no importance to Lu Ming. He skipped through them and flipped through more than 10 pages. He found a few pages that had been marked before he saw the one that Lu Ming was interested in. These were the records of the extinct volcano. So that dormant volcano contains fire spirit milk, which is extremely useful for training the Flaming Vajra arts. So the treasure Zheng is looking for is fire spirit milk. Lu Ming's eyes lit up after reading it. Initially, the progress of the body tempering technique was extremely slow. Lu Ming did not expect to cultivate the Flaming Vajra arts to a profound level in a short period of time. It would not be of much use in a short period of time. However, it would be different if he had the fire spirit milk. He might be able to master the raging Flame Vajra arts in a short time. He did not need much. As long as he could cultivate a first-grade body, it would be of great help to Lu Ming's combat strength. Let's go. Since we know we can't miss this. After tidying up his things, Lu Ming had an idea. He left the Supreme Shrine and headed towards the central region, back to the vicinity of the extinct volcano. Roar! Roar! The roars of demonic beasts rang out. 5 or 6 demonic beasts held the corpses of the 10 Direction Sword Sect disciples in their mouths and ran away. It must have been the smell of blood that attracted the demonic beasts. Lu Ming ignored him and went to the path that the stone hunters, the disciples of the omnipresent sword sect, had asked to explore. There was a white powder mark here, and the outline of the road could be clearly seen. Lu Ming muttered to himself for a moment and then stepped forward. He didn't walk very quickly. He circulated his true qi throughout his body and observed the ground with all his attention. The terrain in this area was constantly changing. Just because it was fine before didn't mean it was fine now. Fortunately, there were no accidents along the way. Lu Ming successfully passed this section of the road. After walking through this path, they would reach the foot of the dead volcano. There were thick piles of black rocks here, and they were very stable, so there was no need to worry about any flames or lava spurting out. Lu Ming climbed up. The extinct volcano was not tall, only a few hundred meters. Very soon Lu Ming reached the top. In the middle of the mountain peak was a huge hole that was hundreds of meters deep. Below it was a black crystal that was as black as ink. According to the Zheng family's ancient records, the fire spirit milk was right below this volcano. Without any hesitation, Lu Ming climbed down slowly along the walls. Soon he climbed down the extinct volcano and reached the bottom. The black crystals below were extremely hard, and inside the wall of the extinct volcano there was a deep pit. In the pit, Lu Ming saw a spiritual herb at a glance. This spiritual herb was fiery red and emitted a crystal-like luster. Flame crystal grass. Lu Ming was overjoyed to see the spiritual herb. This was one of the materials needed to cultivate the 3rd level of the True War Dragon technique. Lu Ming had come to the Lingnan fire field with the intention of finding the flame crystal grass. It was a pity that he had never found it, but he did not expect to find it here. Oh. Chapter 95. Chapter 95. Chapter 95 Refining the Body. 549690339. Not only that, when Lu Ming walked closer to take a look, there was a pool of liquid at the root of the flame crystal grass. There was not much of it, but it was fiery red and had a crystal-like feeling, like it was formed by melting fire jade. Fire spirit milk. This is the fire spirit milk. Lu Ming was overjoyed. There was indeed fire spirit milk here. No wonder the flame crystal grass could grow here. The fire spirit milk was a rare treasure of heaven and earth. It could only be formed in places with extremely rich fire-type spiritual qi, and it contained rich fire-type essence. Lu Ming stepped forward and with a wave of his hand, a jade box and a jade bottle appeared. The jade box was made of ordinary white jade. Lu Ming had prepared it himself to store the spiritual herbs. The jade bottle was found in Zheng's storage ring. It was made of fire jade, and was perfect for storing the fire spiritual milk. He took out a sword, carefully dug out the flame crystal grass, and placed it into a jade box. Then he circulated his true qi and sucked the fire spirit milk into the jade bottle. It's quite a lot, at least 2 caddies. Lu Ming was overjoyed. He had thought that it would be a great opportunity to have 1 caddy. He did not expect to have 2 caddies. If I refine all of this fire spirit milk, how strong will my physical body be? At the very least I can cultivate to upper rank 1, right? Lu Ming pondered in his heart and kept the things. He did not stop and went up along the stone wall. It was a smooth journey and he did not encounter any threats. Very soon, Lu Ming walked out of the central area and returned to the outer area. After returning to the outer area, Lu Ming entered the Supreme Shrine directly. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Ming took out the flaming Vajra art and studied it in detail. Then, he took out the jade bottle that contained the fire spirit milk. Now use the fire spirit milk to practice the raging flame Vajra art. Lu Ming opened the bottle and pondered for a moment. Then he took a small sip. Boom! He swallowed a small mouthful of the fire spirit milk, and it immediately erupted like a volcano. It emitted a scorching aura and violent energy that filled Lu Ming's entire body. Lu Ming's body was like a fireball. Nest, the energy of this fire spirit milk is too terrifying. It has exceeded my imagination. It's so hot and so painful. The energy of the fire spirit milk was extremely hot, burning Lu Ming's muscles, bones, and bones. In this situation, it was as if Lu Ming was being roasted in a raging fire. One could imagine the pain. I have to endure it. The reason why it hurts so much is because my body is too weak. I've never cultivated the path of body refinement before. I've only tempered it slowly with my true qi. After the first time my body has improved and the next time it won't hurt so much. Lu Ming's mind whirred. He gritted his teeth and activated the flaming Vajra art. He started to absorb and refine this scorching energy. Whoosh! It was as if his body was a piece of iron that was being burned and forged in the raging flames. Lu Ming could even hear the sound of his body burning. This process lasted for a full 2 hours before the fire spirit milk's energy was completely refined. At this moment, the pain completely disappeared, and an extremely comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. My physical strength has indeed improved a lot. Lu Ming felt the changes in his body carefully. He discovered that although his body didn't become much stronger, his muscles were much tougher, and his entire body was filled with strength. His blood and qi surged in his veins, full of vitality. His body's functions were stronger than before. The Raging Inferno Vajra art and the Fire Spirit milk are a perfect match. I only refined a small mouthful of it, and it has such an improvement. Although I haven't reached the first grade physical body, I believe that I will soon reach it if this continues. Now continue. Following that, Lu Ming took a small mouthful of Fire Spirit milk and continued to cultivate the Raging Flames Vajra arts. Just like before, when the Fire Spirit milk entered his body, it exploded with an intense fire attribute essence that was incomparably scorching. I wonder if the spirit-devouring bloodline is useful for the Fire Spirit milk. Lu Ming suddenly had an idea. Even before his bloodline had completely regrown, he was already able to quickly refine the power of elixirs. Then, could he quickly refine the power of the Fire Spirit milk now? He would know once he tried. Immediately, Lu Ming controlled his blood meridian and a powerful devouring force was produced at his spine. An NBSP, hoo-hoo. Immediately, the Fire Spirit milk's energy in his body was completely absorbed by his bloodline. Not long after, waves of gentler and purer energy gushed into Lu Ming's body. He circulated the flaming Vajra arts and absorbed all the energy into his body to improve his physical strength. It was different from devouring blood essence. When devouring blood essence, the blood meridian would absorb half of the energy and use it to strengthen itself. Only half of the essence would flow into Lu Ming's body. The Fire Spirit milk was different. All the energy surged into Lu Ming's body. Under the circulation of the flaming Vajra arts, the strength of Lu Ming's body was rapidly increasing. In just about 10 minutes, that small mouthful of Fire Spirit milk was completely refined, and he felt that his body had become stronger again. Moreover, he didn't feel any pain at all. If I had known earlier, I would have controlled my bloodline from the first bite. I wouldn't have to suffer so much. Lu Ming was full of regret. After resting for a while, he continued to refine the fire-transforming spiritual milk. A day later, about 2 to 3 tails of Fire Spirit milk had been refined. Lu Ming's physical body had broken through in one fell swoop and reached the first-grade physical body, reaching the initial success of the first-grade physical body. Boom! Lu Ming circulated the True War Dragon technique. The dragon-shaped essential qi was like the water of a river, surging in Lu Ming's meridians without restraint. Boom! With genuine qi attached to his fist, he punched out. His fist passed through the air, creating a sonic boom. A transparent air wave rushed out. Strong, my body's quality is more than 10 times stronger than before. Whether it's my muscles, bones, meridians, or internal organs, they've all been strengthened by many times. The last time he was besieged by Yao Qianyu and his men, he was severely injured and took 7 to 8 days to recover. But now, Lu Ming believed that he would be fully recovered in 3 days. This was the benefit of having a strong body. Moreover, The combination of his physical body and Lu Ming's cultivation base had increased his combat strength by a large margin. Of course, if Lu Ming did not use his essential qi or martial arts techniques, a third-grade warrior would be able to defeat him easily if he fought with his physical body. The path of the physical body was not used as the main battle, but to support martial arts. I can't just focus on refining the fire spirit milk to improve my physical body. Otherwise, I won't be able to adapt to it all at once. I should go out and cultivate my spear arts now to get my physical body and martial arts in sync. I'll continue to cultivate my physical body after my physical body, true qi, and martial arts have perfectly integrated. Lu Ming then left the Supreme Shrine and returned to the central area to cultivate the fire-controlling spear technique. Just like that, Lu Ming cultivated his spear technique for a few days and refined some fire spiritual milk. As time passed, Lu Ming's spear technique and physical body were improving rapidly. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 days had passed. On the 23rd day, Lu Ming had refined the 2 caddies of fire spirit milk. His physical body was improving at a rapid pace. He advanced from upper first grade to complete first grade and reached lower second grade. This had already surpassed the previous Zheng. Oh,